So,
Hooray.
yeah, if you could just talk at them for a minute about something while
I can talk about the chapter arts
Mhm.
because I haven't really been in the chat lately to talk about them. But to be honest, not amazingly happy with how they've turned out, though I think I've done better on the last few chapters. I think my favorite one, in fact, was Kid Win, and I was like, ugh, I can't believe I accidentally did a good job on Kid Win.
We'll be reviewing them in the last section when I talk about the uh, different parts of the arc.
Hmm.
And we can go over each one. Do you have anything to say about Vista in particular, since she's speeding through the drawing right now?
Look how cute she is with her fake smile.
Yeah. I
Super
is
convincing.
So this is her out in the muck with Flechette talking to Perian.
Yeah, and accepting her rabbit and pretending to be happy with it, which is so goofy, but we'll get into it. I was like, Vista, shut up. That's like my whole reaction to this chapter too. I'm kind of a Vista hater.
I know, and it's always made me sad because I liked Vista from the start, but then I super liked Vista because of Ward, and by the time you were reading Worm, I had already I think I had finished Ward, or did you start reading it? You started reading at the end of 2020, right?
Um, I don't really remember. I think that's right.
Okay, okay, yeah, but yeah, it always made me sad because I was like, oh, but I like Vista. She's
Well,
cool.
I do like Vista, but I think I like to give her shit as
Yeah, yeah,
well
yeah. I
because her I think that
I know that
maybe like
now.
I think maybe a lot of people would read it and be like, I don't know, more on her side, and I'm just like, shut up, Vista, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
gonna play the Sophia part this arc.
yeah, I mean you will. I literally have in my notes here on our chapters that you'll be reading the Sophia quotes.
Oh my gosh, okay.
But let's address the chat for a second. Greg says, and she's got her rabbit. So hi Greg, hi Vale, hi Toby, hi 2 plus 4 times 5, and oh, 2 plus 4 times 5 finished reading Ward. That's cool.
That's
Um,
great. Good
did
job.
you love the ending?
That must have been their New Year's resolution. So now you got to figure out something for the rest of the year.
Exactly. Um,
I'm
Vale.
speechless how anyone doesn't think Vista is amazing. Okay, Vista is amazing. She's just like a loser though. Okay, listen, we'll get into it. And I did I I don't hate Vista, okay? I want to make that clear. I just want to give her some feedback on some of her opinions.
Well, we'll get into the feedback as the chapter goes. 2 plus 4 times 5 said Ward was great. Greg says Victoria being Sophia type makes a lot of sense.
Oh
Smile to
no.
lessen the impact. And then Vale, you're allowed to have your opinions. I'll respect them. However, you are wrong. All right, all right. So the reminder for the audience participation questions at near the end of the stream are 9.5, why is Vista the best, and 9.6, why is Shadowstalker the worst?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They were kind of on the spot questions I came up with because you know, the questions are hard to think up sometimes.
Yeah.
And then totally unrelated to the chapters, I remembered an old adventure or an old episode of The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest that had a villain who could kill people using the shadow of a marionette puppet to slash and stab them with the little puppet sword. Um, and if he hit your shadow, then he would like cut you for real. So he used like a spotlight to like, you know,
The
portray a
mangle.
human-sized attacker. Um, and it was really unclear what was killing you because like it was hard to put together that it was attacking your shadow before you were already dead. Um,
Mhm.
Seemed like it would be a good parahuman power.
Yeah. There's a lot of good parahuman powers that you kind of just stumble upon in other media.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see here. We got um very Naruto is what Toby says.
Yeah.
Um, it kind of is. But this is pre Naruto. And then the themes, we got the themes of trauma slash coping, like Vale had called out last week. And this theme is pretty strong in these two chapters, as well as the Clock Blocker chapter. Each one has their own way of like lashing out about this, with the exception of Kidwin, who is pretty unfazed by all the bad shit and just keeps doing his thing. And to quote a later section of the book, no offense, she was offended. Yeah, he's
Offended at that part too.
yeah, he's he breaks the mold, but
Hmm.
I guess he doesn't have to cope. Anyway, I think we're ready to do the chapter.
Okay, so we start out in our Vista chapter. So Vista and Flechette arrive in Perian's territory, and Flechette plucks a string to like signal their arrival. I can't remember if they had established that in the last chapter or like she's been visiting more often since then.
Well, just to sort of put it in perspective, it's not always clear the timeline of the chapters when you're reading, but I've taken the time to make sure. Um, Essentially, this is the next day from the
Hmm.
time that she had seen her. So I don't know if she would have had time to see her in between
Okay,
necessarily. Um,
sure. So,
but
Perian and a 9 foot tall rabbit emerge from an alley. And Vista's like, it's so cute. And presents a shopping bag full of necessities and lets Perian know to get it to a safe place before her power wears off on it. Because, it'll just explode. So Perian accepts the gift and she uses her power to start making something with needles, thread, and cloth like over their shoulder while she talks to them. Um, Perian mentions that some kids were in the area roughing up one of her family friends to try to figure out how to get or where to get food. Perry mentions that there's not enough food to go around, and then she kind of tries to take it back because she feels like she's being accusatory towards the wards. But Flechette's like, "Yeah, you're right. We're not doing a good job."
yeah,
um,
but Flechette does give, I think, a reasonable explanation of like we can't fight all these bastards.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like she admits that they're not doing a good job and that there's like obviously lots of reasons why. Just whenever they try to distribute supplies, the one of the gangs will show up and cause problems. And Flechette starts trying to romance Perian. So luckily Vista's earpiece goes off and she has an excuse to step away while that happens.
Dude, I mean, Flechette is like wilding out, in my opinion. She's like, immediately when she gets to town, she's like, hey, Shadow Stalker. Then when that doesn't work out, it's like,
I
hey,
know.
Varian.
She's like
She's on it.
I don't she's just on it. She like goes so I don't know. Not that she's like aggressive, but it definitely is a lot. And I don't know, like if I was Harriet, I'd be like hesitant too. Like, geez, you're coming on strong. Um, so over
I
the
don't know. It
comm,
seems to be kind of like working at this stage.
I mean, it seems like it's working, but like I think it's only working because Perian's probably like not that she's in like a time warp, but just like things, her like status quo was like so demolished.
Right.
Like, I don't think this would have worked at any other time.
Toby says Flechette is simping much earlier and then now says Seems like it's working. Just direct quoting me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I don't know.
sure, except this is apparently the first long-lasting relationship she lands on. Yeah, but they're also like she's like 16 or 17, right?
I think that Lily is like
She's
17.
she's got to be 17 because Perion's like 19 or something.
Dude, I think Perion's in her early 20s. I think
Oh
it's
my
like a
God.
problematic age gap.
Problematic. Okay, we'll have to pay attention to that. Um, And so Weld is over the comms and asks everybody to get back to the base quickly. So Vista just politely waits for a break in the conversation before letting her know that they need to get back. Flechette lets Perion know that she'll stop by later, and Perion's like, "I'll look forward to it."
See
And
what
then
I
gives
mean?
Vista. Yeah, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And she gives Vista the project she was working on over their brief conversation. It's a cute stuffed bunny in a fancy dress, depicted here. Vista thinks like Vista has a lot of like back and forth between her own thoughts, which is funny because she's like, "This is a nice gesture. I hate it, but I'm in a safe space."
No, no, but
There's
that's
just a
I swear, like that was so relatable to me. Like that, like I hate this, but I will play along. Upsetly on the inside.
a lot. Sigma said Lily keeps getting uprooted. It's not exactly her fault. She hasn't been able to build any lasting relationships. But yeah, she definitely does go off desperate. Toby said. Though I wonder if maybe it isn't partially Perion's influence on the relationship. Yeah. She has a thanks, I hate it reaction. It's just this is like my first like Vista. Like literally she sees the giant bunny and she's like, "Oh my God, it's so cute." And so Perion's like, "Cute, I'll make like her own bunny." Like it seems like a totally reasonable reaction to me. Like it wasn't just unprompted, like
Yeah,
giving
no,
her a stuffed animal.
I know what you mean, but like you know, as a little demon child myself, I felt patronized. But I guess not everybody does.
I just think that Vista Vista has like a Gregor effect, where she like thinks everybody's like
Right.
always thinking some sort of thing about her, and it kind of makes her life not as enjoyable.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're right, and it's kind of funny because like that's like the well that her thoughts are stuck in. Like that's her main like focus, whereas like that's not really related to her trigger event, and I feel like she kind of has like even though she's a parahuman, she has so much wrong with her life that she's got like multiple
Multiple.
trauma sources and stuff, and like multiple main things. Just her
Yeah.
power is focused on the like getting distance from other people.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. As I was reading this, because I was like, this is like her number one hang up, and it seems totally unrelated from her power. So like I don't have any of that context yet because I haven't finished Ward. So
Well, I don't think it's like giant spoilers to say like she has just these terrible parents and her trigger event was them like endlessly fighting because they're like kind of upper middle class and like they got separated and divorced but both of them refused to leave the house so that they could like stake a claim to it to like living in
mhm,
it so that they could keep it in their like legal battle. Um and they were
mm,
just real shits to each other.
yeah, sounds like it.
So
Well, um, she takes the bunny and she's like, haha, I thinks I hate it, and then she gives a a nice smile and decides to brush away her annoyance that it's a child's gift.
Oh wait,
um,
I realized something just earlier, but didn't want to interrupt anybody. That Flechette in her chapter, and I should have seen this in the previous chapter, but Flechette is, or I mean, on 9.2, is a total switch because she's like definitely the like masculine energy in this whole Parian interaction, but with
Mhm.
Sophia it would have been the other way around, and she was
Yeah.
like barking up all trees.
See, I know that's the other thing I was thinking. I was like the Flechette and sorry, not Flechette, but Parian and Shadowstalker are not only like way different like physical body types, but way different personality types. And Flechette is just so desperate.
Yeah. Anyway.
Toby said, "This is positive self-talk. Bad Place Vista is a mopey toy hater, but she talks herself out of being an asshole about it." Yeah. Um, so Flechette and Vista head back to the base, and Vista uses her power to give them a shortcut. Very, very dramatically, like through it seems like blocks and blocks. She's probably loving her power lately now that like nobody is driving anymore and like all the streets are shut down. Um,
Yeah,
so
I was thinking about it, and her power, aside from being like ridiculously more powerful now, the fact that it mostly like she can, I don't know quite yet, but if it's like a straight line, she can do it pretty subtly, and she could zoom around the city with like almost no one knowing where she's going or stuff. I don't know.
mhm,
She just takes like a single
yeah.
step and she's past an area.
Yeah, she's very strong,
Five
which
two plus four times five.
Flechette does comment on, and she says that Vista could be at the top of the Protectorate in a few years, and Vista's like, that's what they used to say about Dauntless. um, and naturally, Flechette is concerned about this dark comment, and is very openly expressing that concern, which I think is nice of her. I think it's just another way that like Vista thinks Flechette is looking down on her, but like Flechette is very straight up, like okay, like happy to have this conversation with her. That's like you wouldn't have with somebody that you look down on. Like you would just take it to somebody, like some kind of authority figure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so Vista says that it doesn't make any sense to worry about the far off future because they could just die at any time. And Flechette's like, "Oh, so you're thinking about leaving the team?" And Vista's like, "No, of course not." Um, she's not worried about
I'm just
dying.
gonna
She's just
die like everybody else. Deal with
yeah, she's
it.
just being
Grow
realistic.
up.
I pulled a quote here if you want to read it.
Oh, I do, I do. Well, I'll do my fake quote from Flechette that I just thought of, which is like, "Why aren't you more daunted by the loss of Dauntless?" Ha 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 ha. I can't tell if you're being amazingly mature about the topic of death, or if I should be really concerned about you. Amazingly mature, and then break between stuff. You know what I mean. Vista had to bite her tongue, pointing out that people were being condescending had a way of making her look petulant, which only compounded the problem. Yes, because any maturity on my part is something special. Doesn't matter that I have 9 months of seniority over Kid Win. Being 13 means everyone expects me to be squealing over Justin Bieber, or the Maggie Holt books, or dressing in pink, or. And then it cuts to the next paragraph.
So Vista's internal rant is interrupted by their arrival at the PRT and seeing a giant framed picture of Gallant's face on the wall. And her own portrait near his kind of gives even more contrast because it's in color. And it was taken when she was 10 years old. And she really hates the picture. She just thinks she's ugly and, childlike in it.
Wow, I
Um,
look like a fucking kid. Fuck that.
uh, I know, and she wonders if
I'm an
Gallant's picture is
adult!
is even like doing him any justice too. Um, So Flechette asks Vista if she's okay, and Vista very maturely runs off to the elevators. Um, in the meeting room with the team, Kid Win starts giving out all the deets of what happened in his chapter, which is that Chariot is planning on joining the team, but as a mole for some unknown party. And they think that he's probably working for Coil because he kind of has a history of doing this. Um, and then the Pago like just drops some bombs. Pago's just crazy this chapter, which is so fun.
Dude, I love Pago. Like, she's one of the best characters.
I love her too. Pago just tells them that there's already 3 people that they know of who work for Coil that work at the PRT headquarters. That Dragon like had found out through some surveillance footage and stuff. But they just decided to keep them employed so that they can keep an eye on them and then like occasionally just feed them bad info. So Pago is hoping that in a similar way, um, they can all agree to let Chariot join the team. And they can, keep an eye on things and spread rumors to him, but she wants all of the kiddos explicit permission to do that first. And each member just individually agrees to it. It seems like Clock Blocker is the only one who's like not enthusiastic about it, or not enthusiastic about it, but he's just like, I don't know. Seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and Pago lets them know that all of their devices would be bugged. Um, Kidwin says, like, Chariot's Tinker, he'll probably figure out their surveillance. But apparently they had Dragon herself working on this, so maybe you'll never know.
Eh.
Toby Walker said, headcanon, Justin Bieber didn't make it as big as a musician in this timeline, but instead as an abstract painter.
Yeah, yeah. And then Greg says, and due to the cultural trade with Aleph, now they have Justin Bieber albums with Justin Bieber cover art.
That's great.
What a gift
Uh,
to the world.
I don't think Justin's old enough to be in both.
I think generally like this is one of those misses. I think it's better when basically no one from post 1982 is alive and everyone from before 1982 is in the
Mm.
universe, which makes it like kind of funny that like all old celebrities are here.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So they let's see, where was I? Oh, everybody agrees. And Pago is telling them that all their stuff is gonna get bugged. And then Pago is like, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for working with me. And she even gives a special shout out to Kid Win for breaking the law to get
Shouts out to the
information.
kid. Yeah.
And and they're all like, "Whoa, that was crazy." After she leaves, Clockblocker notes that it's creepy when she acts "quote unquote" human, which Vista takes as a joke, but I don't know. I didn't think it was a joke.
I
um,
I think it's good. I pull it out later, but Kid Win kind of gets a payoff to his chapter. Like I really do feel like he's noticeably more confident in his
yeah,
interactions during this.
yeah, I agree. I think he's having like the best day,
Hmm.
even though they made some unfortunate discoveries earlier.
Yeah.
Um, So Vista's just happy to see that Clock Blocker is getting some of his spunk back to his old self. So the gang disbands, and after a brief chat with Flechette, Weld approaches Vista, and he's like, "You really need to take a shower," which I found offensive, but that's okay.
I
Um,
got where he was coming from. I mean, he doesn't know the pleasures of a shower, but I feel like they can really
uh, yeah, maybe that's what it is. He's like, you know what? You know what humans love?
Well, the thing is that
Um,
like it can be very refreshing, and he's spent most of his time working in this like um kind of like quasi gritty setting where like his team members are getting like covered in crap as they run around fighting people. They probably like to take the showers. They're sweaty
um,
people.
yeah, luckily Vista's not offended. And he's like, after you do that, you should come talk to me for a quick chat. And Vista's like, oh my God, this means like Flechette to talk to
She
him about what I
fucking
said
ratted
earlier.
on me already?
Yeah, ratted you out. So as Vista preps for her shower, she's thinking to herself, that taking off her costume makes her feel less like herself. And she wonders like when she became more Vista than she is Missy, which is I think the first and only time we hear her real name in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
just another, she thinks of herself as Vista like 100% of the time. Um, So after her shower, she's kind of like examining all of her cuts and bruises and old scars in the mirror. There's a specific scar under her collarbone that Hookwolf had left a year ago. And she'd been like too embarrassed to ask for help because she didn't want, I don't know, she thought that they would be like, "Oh, you big baby." Um, but it
What
turned
a
out like
wimp.
it needed to be stitched up, and so she just ended up doing it herself. And she said she kind of regrets this because it's gonna be like on display if when she gets older she tries to like show off cleavage or whatever. But on the other hand, why should she care about that? She's gonna die soon anyways.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't like the part where she she's like, it makes me a good soldier. That like made me really sad.
Yeah. She's
She says
really
as though it was some kind of proof to herself that she was a good soldier. Like, oh, come on, Vista.
yeah, she's really invested in the idea of being like strong as a parahuman and like part of the wards and protectorate structure.
Yeah, real sellout.
Well, because also, she's probably trying to justify everything to herself after like killing Bastion and stuff and whatever, all these different things.
Yeah, that's true. Um, Well, this train of thought is interrupted when a toilet flushes in a nearby stall, so she kind of wraps the towel around herself to hide her scar as Sophia approaches the sink. Sophia's like, chill out, you don't even have boobs. And Vista angrily ignores this, and she just like stands there silently glaring in the mirror as Sophia brushes her teeth, which is really funny. Um,
Yeah,
and as she leaves, as Sophia leaves, she musses Vista's hair a bit too forcefully. So Vista is kind of unhappy to see that everyone in the team is getting back to their old selves because Sophia has been playing nice, seemingly since the Leviathan attack.
but she's starting to be a real piece of shit.
She's getting back to her old self. That's what we want to see, right?
I think the thing is that Sophia is going from contented by the amount of violence that she's allowed to do to all the other stuff is stacking up, like her social isolation, where she essentially has no friends or anyone to talk to at all. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
S- So Vista finishes getting ready and heads over to Weld's room. He's just vibing, listening to
Oh, hell
music.
yeah.
One of his only human pleasures.
He loves sound and vision.
Yeah,
These are the two
yeah.
things he likes.
But he greets Vista, and he lets her know that Flechette expressed some concerns. and he just wanted to make sure she's okay. And he mentions that Vista had been inconsolable at Gallant's bedside, and now she's acting like dying doesn't even faze her. This is like an aggressive thing to say to somebody. But I don't know, maybe like that was the technique he was going for, was to like not break her down a little bit, but like, you know, get past the like hard shell that is like holding everything back right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, but he's worried that she's gonna he's basically asking if she's suicidal in the way that, like Miss Militia used to be, like putting herself in unnecessary harm's way because they're like, nothing matters. A
Yeah,
very
they can get like
Pearl
super
situation.
ungrounded and like
Yeah.
flipping out. Yeah.
Vista's like, no, I just want to do a good job and make up for all of our members that have died, um, now that they're gone. And Weld's like, this is gonna be too much for you to carry, and I feel like you're gonna run into some problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He wants her to trust her teammates to carry on the legacy, along with her, and he mentions he's noticed Clockblocker stepping up to be the leader in the place of Aegis and Gallant. And Weld says Aegis is like was the head of the team and Gallant was the heart. So if Clockblocker is stepping up to fill that Aegis role, then maybe Vista should step up to fill the Gallant role and just focus on her strengths. Like being likable, caring, and sweet. He said it a little bit goofy. He was like, you're just the sweet young lady that everybody likes. And I'm like, that was way more demeaning than anything else that's been said to this chapter. I know
Let
he
me see.
doesn't mean it, but like,
Yeah, sweet,
I don't know.
caring, sweet young woman who everyone on the
Yeah,
team
that's
likes. Yeah.
like when if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, shut the fuck up, dude. Um, but I don't know. Vista seems to like it, and she kind of starts tearing up. Um, Vale
Okay,
said.
so yeah, to go to the chat if you wanna.
Vale said to a kid her age, is that really demeaning? I feel like it might have hit nicer. Yeah, but like to a kid her age is like the whole thing. Like she doesn't like that people talk to her at the age that they view her. Um,
And yet, weirdly here, when I think he like threads the needle,
mhm.
where he is talking to her in a way that if she was an adult would be like, come the fuck on. But like, because
Yeah,
she's a kid, even though she feels all grown up, this still works on her.
yeah. I think I don't know. He just takes on like a very mentorship role with her, and I guess for her it's fine when he does it. It's fine when Weld does it, okay?
Well, I think the other thing is that she's used to being on a team as well, where like she's been in this sort of team dynamic for what, like 3 years now,
Hmm.
and so she's used to the idea of like going to Aegis or going to Challenger and like asking them something important or whatever, or
Hmm.
like fighting alongside them, you know. So she's in
Hmm.
some ways like really integrated into this team mentality. Like that's why I think it's so important to her, the PRT and the wards, because she's like invested so much of her life, like more than a quarter of it, into this thing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
but also we did skip Greg's older comments of the Beebs is is the one universal constant, and then about Weld, and everybody who sees him enjoying music makes the same heavy metal joke. Yeah, and then Vale says all her strong connections are to her teammates. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So Weld follows this up by giving Vista two orders. The first is to go to therapy. Fair. He and I agree that it's unbelievable that they did not mandate therapy after the Leviathan attack.
No, no, no. We're
Um,
all fine. We're all fine.
yeah, everything's fine. And then number two is to let herself cry. And Vista tries to argue with that point, but it's too late. She's just kind of like sobbing, and they just hug each other for it seems like it's like for several minutes they're just standing there like hugging while Vista cries. So I mean I'm glad she got that.
It sounds
So
like she
after
really
that
needed it.
after that, Vista heads back to like the main area where Sophia's at the comms. Um, and she's like, "You been crying again, you little baby."
What a
And Vista
fucking
snaps back and she's like,
baby.
"What's your issue?" Um, which I don't know. It's just funny that like I think that Sophia says this later to Taylor. Maybe it's Emma, but like they have a really similar mindset where they're like, if you had just like fought back, then we would have stopped. But that's obviously not true because Vista does fight back when she's being bullied.
Whenever someone fights back, Sophia gets way, way like worse. She gets
Yeah,
mad.
she gets way more mad. So she Sophia just says that she hates crybabies. And Vista, in the spirit of focusing on people's strengths, thinks to herself that Sophia is quite talented at finding people's weak points. And ends up under her breath calling Sophia a bitch. And then I pulled a quote here if you want to read it.
Hmm. She thought she spoke quietly enough that Sophia didn't hear, but the girl did, because she had a response. You annoyed him, you know. Vista stopped in her tracks, stayed where she was, her back to Sophia. She replied without turning. Weld, you don't know. Gallant. 12-year-old following him around all the time, brimming with prepubescent lust and lovesick infatuation, and he can feel all of her emotions. You know how gross that would be? How disturbing and awkward?
So
Correct.
Sophia keeps it up. She starts like digging deeper and talks about how he had forced himself to smile even though he was so repulsed by her. Um, and like talks about Vista being turned on by him, which is gross. Um,
I mean, it may be
Vista
cringe in, or whatever, but it's also, like, cringe of Sophia to bring it up.
No, no, it's way cringe of Sophia is what I
Yeah,
mean. Like,
yeah,
why would you talk to she's like 13 here or whatever, but she's like talking about her when she was like 11 and 12. Like, shut up, Sophia.
yeah.
Um, and Vista's like, I loved him, and there's nothing gross about that. And Sophia tells her that she's wrong. It was just a first crush. Like, it's nothing like what he had with Glory Girl. Um, Sophia obviously thinks that the most romantic type of relationships are the on and off ones.
If we're not
um
fighting, we shouldn't be together.
yeah, if you're not fighting, it's like not passionate enough, I guess. Um and Sophia just smiles at her and says it's better to hear for her to hear it now than realize how stupid she was later. I was gonna reply to Vale's comment. At any point in the future of the entire parahuman story, do you start to like her more? Is the dislike the scene and her behavior here, or is it more in general? No, I do like her. I'm just
Just giving her shit.
hyperbolic. I
Yeah.
just like to give her shit. That's the thing. Is that I'm not exactly sure, but like the only responses I've heard to this chapter have been like I guess from William and then also from We've Got Worm. And they just kind of well, not you, but in We've Got Worm, like I feel like they just kind of take her like saying that she's like so much more mature and like people are treating her like really condescendingly like at face value when like to me it's more of like this warped worldview and I get it like she's not in a good place right now so she's probably like much more exhausted than usual but I don't know. Like people just try to be nice to her and she kind of misconstrues that, I think, a lot of the time. And in a lot of ways, like, she is very immature. So I think that it's like an unfair assessment to be like, oh, well, I'm so much more mature because I have like a lot of experience as a parahuman. But that's not the thing. Like I guess I
Yeah, I
think
mean
those things are more
that
unrelated than
reading
she thinks they are.
that reading really fits like the way that we were taking the like why she accepted the weld compliment earlier is
Mm.
like because of that immaturity, and so it like that strengthens the idea that she has like a warped perspective of this.
Yeah, and it makes me feel like very sad for her because I think like you said, like her main problem is life is like creating distance between her and other people, and like that at the end of the day is what this perspective is kind of doing.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
is she just continuously like othering herself and um like seeing these kind of relationships in the worst light, which it just makes me feel bad for her.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
um
Yeah.
Bill said
See. Oh.
my perspective
Mhm.
is more like a good counselor where many readers are like fans. Well, that's usually the thing is like I I guess I like Vista, but yeah, I'm not like a I won't fangirl about Vista at
Yeah,
this
this
point.
this is part of why I have always enjoyed talking to you about parahumans. Is I felt like the way that me and you look at the story is so much more similar than like me and the We've Got Worm guys or whatever.
Yeah.
We're focused more on the same things, um, rather than just looking at the narrative structure and stuff. I guess I don't know.
Which, I mean, I wish I was better at that kind of stuff, but luckily those guys can cover the,
Right. Yeah.
the writing aspects and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's my favorite thing is like analyzing characters, and that's just why I give Vista so much shit for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think is she a fan favorite or am I just
I feel like she is, but I don't know.
yeah.
Like I'm not in touch with the community like at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the thing is the only thing I can base it off of is like amount of fan art about them. And I didn't see a lot of Vista today. I saw a ton of Shadow Stalker and I was like, "Oh my God, like do people love Shadow Stalker?"
maybe they love to hate Shadowstalker.
I
Vale
well,
says
I don't
I
know.
think Vista is top 30, but not a top 10. That makes sense.
Mm,
Oh, you know what
yeah.
we could kind of base this off of? We could look at the
Hmm.
results in the future of the We've Got Worm, We've Got Ward character brackets because they did
Oh,
character voting brackets with their community, and I remember being a part of that. I voted in a few of those. Um,
that would be very helpful. We could do that sometime.
because that'll give us a better idea of like at least when those were being recorded, like kind of who people liked. So,
Okay. We'll see. We'll root for Vista getting top 30.
but not top
Um,
10.
yeah. So Vista isn't happy about Sophia right now. She considers using her power on her, but instead she asks Sophia what happened to her to make her so cruel. And she just like kind of keeps talking and talking and talking. And like Sophia's like not really say she's just like shut up, shut up, shut up. And she lets her know that if she ever wants to talk, like Vista will be here to listen. Sophia says she doesn't want to hear shit from Vista. And Vista's like, I pity you, which is a bad move. Like, speaking of looking down on people,
Trying to
Jesus.
not stir the pot here, but I really pity you.
Which was clearly a bad move, and Sophia uses her power and to attack Vista and shoves her to the ground. Um, Vista says, Weld says it takes a kind of strength to face your emotions. Are you really that scared, Sophia, that you'd attack me instead of talk to me? um, it's just like this is not the time, girl.
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes they just, make bad decisions and they just keep
uh,
pushing the envelope.
yeah. So before anything worse happens, Vista mentions the security cameras, and Sophia drops her, and she's like, "I'm going on patrol," and heads out of the building.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to point out here because I didn't pull the quote, but I noticed it while I was listening through this part here. Uh, she saw Sophia in her shadow state, wispy, her skeleton visible beneath her skin, warped. The girl's eyes were too reflective. Her entire body seemed to bend and distort, not completely solid as she leaped toward Vista. I feel like this is one of the only times that people see her like fighting not in dim light, and
Hmm.
like most breaker states have these like creepy forms, and most changer forms are like off-putting and unsettling, and it just
Hmm.
sort of reminded me of that because like so far in the story there haven't been that many things, but it'll be like more of a trend later, and like there's bitches dogs, there's Genesis creatures that she projects,
Hmm.
and then I can't think of too many other like kind of really weird off-putting sights that we see, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lung's head kind of gets tiny and weird.
Oh my God. I mean, there's gonna be all the Nilbog stuff, but I guess those aren't people.
Well, they're kind of people. But also, I just
They're kind of
mean
people.
I mean like later there's tons and tons of it, but like
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
far in the
yeah.
story we haven't seen that much, but we are about to see like um uh a lot of
A
ghoulish
lot.
stuff.
I feel like there's a lot of things that are implied, like Bakura threatening to like disfigure
Oh yeah,
Gru and
Gru,
that
that's
kind
really
of thing.
horrible.
Yeah, but at this point in the book, we haven't. There's just like a lot of that almost happening, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah, and just like hyperviolence that couldn't really happen in a normal setting, like the idea that Storm Tiger would stab you and then explode the air from inside you.
Yeah.
Like it's just like Jesus
Um,
Christ.
Vil said, "Dun dun dun. I hope nothing bad happens on her patrol." But I do hope something bad happens on her patrol.
So I'm
The
gonna switch to the next art and start the speed draw.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's something I actually very much dislike Sophia. Different than how I mostly jokingly dislike Vista. It's just that I have this whole like there's a lot of dichotomy of characters in this book, like similarly like aged or like personality character that characters have or whatever, but one of them is cool and one of them's lame. And so I've got my Vista and Dinah, and Vista is the loser and Dinah's the cool one.
Oh, of course, of
And
course.
then like later we'll see Accord, and he's obviously the cool version of Coil. Um,
I think
Sophia just has no redeeming qualities. Yeah, I agree. Sophia sucks ass.
I think that um I think that I'm more sympathetic to Sophia than almost anyone I've ever heard. Um
Just planning on having some sympathy for her this chapter. Just a
hmm,
little bit, though.
okay. I I guess it like we can also talk about stuff more during like a later chapter that she's involved in that goes we kind of see her family and stuff. Um
Hmm.
it's not from her perspective exactly, but it's still kind of important to her story, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't talk about any of that here. I'm just talking about the chapter itself, and we are on Shadowstalker's chapter, Sophia. She's on the roof of the Hillside Mall downtown, This is happening shortly after she jumped on Vista and barely held back from fully attacking her. She was hoping to find some looters here, having had some luck on that front last week. Annoyed to
Hmm.
find cops instead, it's clear she doesn't want to protect them all. She wanted to beat people up, damn it. Oh, people are talking. Um, Vale says this chapter, just after her failed attempt at cold blooded murder, because it would be convenient, she suffers a loss. Yeah. Um, Greg says, funnily, I think the I pity you is sort of the blunt force needed to batter through Sophia's emotional barriers and potentially redeem her, but Missy's not equipped to follow through. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Need to say something that really pisses her off.
That Sophia would need to uh be involved in very intensive therapy while like being on like a team that's a much better fit for her to be able to like not like redeem herself to me, but like be a functioning person that's not just evil.
Right.
Yeah. Vale said, I love seeing Taylor through Shadowstalker's eyes. It just doesn't happen enough to see Taylor from the outside. Yes, I do love that too.
It's good. And I like how she basically admires Skitter, but then whenever things are getting inconvenient, she's like, "You little freak! I'll kill you." Um, so she calls Emma using a wireless earbud for something to do while she continues to look for someone to fight. It's clear from the conversation that Emma is fully brought in on the knowledge of Sophia being Shadowstalker. She's been in Portland and she's bored. Emma says she wishes she was back, and Sophia admits that she wants the same. Then she starts going off on the wards, or about the wards, rather. Um, she clearly vents to them about Emma a lot because Emma seems to have been down this conversational road many times and just lets Sophia go off about them without interruption or questions. And it seems like Sophia might know that she talks about this too much, but she can't help herself. I've pulled out some longer quotes here and want you, Victoria, to read Sophia's parts.
Is it
Um,
because I sound like her? With
Definitely.
my
Uh,
with my vocal fry?
exactly.
Okay.
Um, so this week you're Sophia and I'm Emma, even though we both know that I'm Sophia and you're Madison.
Yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah, yeah.
So when Sophia brings up the state of the city, Emma interjects that she saw stuff about it on the news.
Right. Damaged, destroyed, fucked up. This is a place those kids visit, and they're still convinced they can fix it. I've lived with this my whole life, waded through the shit from the beginning. I know they're deluding themselves. So, yeah, they're immature, new to this, and I don't know how long I can fucking put up with them.
So Emma says that she has 2.5 more years of probation, which really sets off or Sophia off.
God, don't remind me. Makes me realize I'm not even halfway through it. I can't believe it's already been this long, constantly hearing them bitch about dating or clothes or allowances. And every time I hear it, it's like I want to scream in their face, fuck you, you little shit, shut the fuck up. I've killed people, and then washed the blood off my hands and went to school and acted normal the next day.
Yeah, reading between the lines here, Emma doesn't like when the murder gets brought up, and
She's a little more sensitive than Sophia.
yeah, she's not exactly the cold blooded killer that Sophia wants her to be. Um,
Hmm.
and again, it seems like Sophia knows that she's lashing out but can't help it.
Uh, If it weren't for all the crying and the complaining, I would almost be glad Leviathan had attacked the city. Tear away that fucking ridiculous veneer that covers everything. Get rid of those fucking fake smiles and social niceties and daily routines that everyone hides behind.
Yeah, Emma asks, "Yeah?" Sophia agrees. Yeah. Greg says, as if killing people is a good thing that makes you strong. Um, Yeah. And then Shadowstalker gets completely lost in thought after she says, yeah, she doesn't keep elaborating, but she does keep, like, her train of thought going as though she's having a conversation with someone. She thinks on how Leviathan revealed the animal in all of them that's hidden barely beneath the surface. She mentally pigeonholes people into being sheep, rats, or predators. And she first thinks that she doesn't care which category people fall into if they don't get in her way. Thinking about one of her obsessions, Gru gets a mention. And then she kind of contradicts herself from earlier because, like, her worldview is full of holes. Uh, she thinks about hating Taylor and Vista, saying they're lame and depressing, continuing down that line of thought that if sheep slash victims stay out of her awareness, then she can tolerate them. You know, if you're over there, far, far away from me.
Yeah, which I feel like isn't even true. I think she could I I think if she was like totally alone or whatever, she would pursue them, but what she really means is that she would rather just be surrounded by the other predators um because they're more entertaining.
Right, yeah. And then she thinks of Pigot and Emma as other predators that are useful to her and facilitate her being able to do what she wants to in the two major aspects of her life, Cape and civilian. And then to quote from the book, she was a predator, whether she was Shadowstalker or Sophia. And then, right as she's thinking about how awesome she is and that everyone knows it, she gets distracted by a couple of cargo trucks driving down a road in a little convoy. And she thinks it's either supplies being shipped in or it's a bunch of Coil soldiers, but either way, she's going to go after it. And then, after paragraphs of thinking silently, she remembers she's on the phone with Emma and tells her, something's going on. Or no, that'd be you.
Something's going on. Going to see if it leads to anything interesting.
Call back when you're done. Give me the recap.
Right.
She hung up. And it's just like, think if there's like 30-second pause after she just said like this weird, crazy rant, and then she just goes, something's going on.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been on the phone with people that have just forgotten that they were on the phone with me before. And then like as we'll just sit like silently for like 10 minutes and then I'll say something and they'll be like, "Ah."
Yeah.
So, like I kind of feel for Emma right now. She's just like waiting for the other person to like figure out their shit and then just it's completely dismissed.
Yeah, it's funny. To me. So anyway, now we get the power description and things. She can change into her shadow state in half a second. Nearly all biological processes stop, and her cells can individually nourish themselves on air that passes through. Um, she's light enough to glide and let the slight lift of heated air from a gravel rooftop keep her aloft. And then, as we saw in Flechette's chapter, she can like easily jump and fling herself between buildings. Whenever she returns to her like human form, she feels this strange like jerk back to reality. Um, Moving like this, she's able to keep up with the trucks, which can't move too fast due to the damaged streets. So after shadowing the group of the two trucks for about 5 minutes, Fenrir's chosen attack the supply convoy, and then Menya pops out of an alley, and stabs the lead truck in the engine. The second truck can't stop in time, and uh, it basically collides with the first one. Miss Militia gets out of the passenger seat of the first truck and starts pelting her with a grenade launcher. Um, Menya, if you don't remember, has the power to grow uh, quite large, and as she grows to a larger size, then it's basically like all of the attacks on her are also inversely smaller. So basically, physical attacks barely work on her. So you can kind of unload a grenade launcher and not worry about it too much. Um. Anyway, um, So then, after that, Hookwolf and two of his animal goons join the fight, and with a bunch of normie Nazis, they take on a bunch of PRT guys and assault who got out of the trucks, and they all start, fighting about. Um, it was kind of funny to see this scene from Shadowstalker's perspective. She's so detached, and she's like contributing so much to the fight anyway.
Mhm.
But she takes out Cricket like it's nothing, and then she's pretty good at reasoning her way through like what she needs to be doing in a cape fight. But she doesn't have a good way to fight against the remaining capes, Menya, Hookwolf, or Storm Tiger, and so she just starts taking down a whole bunch of the normal guys. And this is one of those times that even though Shadowstalker does suck, it's pretty great seeing her wrecking a bunch of these Nazis like this. They're just
Mhm.
dropping like flies.
Dropping like flies.
And Hookwolf is threatening his guys to get into the fight, despite the fact that they probably don't bring much value and are like panicking because they're getting dropped by an unknown attacker. Then Miss Militia hits Hookwolf with a mortar while he's like distracted. I think that him threatening his guys is literally enough of a waste of his time in a fight that it's not worth it to have the guys there. He's just so
Yeah.
stupid.
He's just not very smart.
I think it's
He
like
just likes telling
literally,
people what to do.
yeah, he's just an asshole who's like not even that concerned with being efficient, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, so Miss Militia starts opening fire on the crowd of normal dudes with automatic weapons that are firing rubber bullets. We get a little setting detail that she can make up for the downsides of them in real life. Shadowstalker can keep taking them out easily from where she is, but decides to jump down to street level because she wanted to fight in close quarters combat anyway. And she's pretty honest with herself about the fact that she, went out tonight to beat the shit out of people for catharsis. I think shockingly honest. Bye, small dog. The small dog came inside the room and then just left, so. Anyway, right before she jumps down to fight them, some of the mooks start freaking out and stop trying to be stealthy, so she realizes that Skitter is attacking them. Seemingly not using her bugs on the PRT, she appears running away with a canvas bag of supplies. And then this is you.
God, me hungry, are you? Shadowstalker murmured to herself like a fucking creep.
Yeah, I'm also gonna turn over her italicized thoughts to you because I also drew them
Sure.
out basically as quotes because
Hmm.
I don't know. It's like almost more intentional thinking than the other kind of thoughts. I was trying to like reason it out earlier, and I think it's whenever they're basically talking to themselves in a very directed manner. In this case. So
Yeah.
she immediately changes targets. Shadowstalker knows that Skitter saw her face, and she needs to tie up that loose end, thinking to herself that Skitter is operating alone now. She moves along the rooftops.
Operating solo means there's nobody to miss you.
Shadowstalker keeps pursuing on the rooftops, but then passes through a group of insects which alerts Skitter to her presence. Skitter drops the supplies and bolts. Uh, I use the word bolt to mean run away, but I probably shouldn't have because I also use the word bolt to mean ammunition for the rest of the thing.
Yes.
Anyway, moving without looking back, Shadowstalker is still talking to herself aloud now.
Aloud, yeah. You wanna you want to run? I don't mind a little bit of chase. Shadowstalker smiled behind her mask. I can't read this. Loading the cartridge into her right hand crossbow, which I guess is her like lethal ammunition. She's got she's got her double bows, right? With one
Yeah,
has
she's
lethal and one has not.
she's focusing on which one is which, and the right crossbow has the lethal.
Mm.
Um, After Shadowstalker rounds the corner, Skitter attacks with a swarm. She kind of like tries to turn the tables on her. It's not very effective, but could pose a problem if there were more bugs. Shadowstalker gets up to her and spin kicks her head right into a wall. Which, ow! Um,
Ow.
right before she can shoot Skitter on the ground, Skitter jumps up at her with the combat baton and whacks the crossbow out of her hand. So Shadowstalker decides to slow the fight down, thinking that if Skitter's alone, she has time to hound her.
Which is, you know,
Hmm. It's it's pretty
she's like,
cocky.
I can take my time on this one.
Yeah, yeah.
And if she didn't, then nothing bad would have happened to her. So maybe that's something to think about.
Well, I mentioned
Um,
that later is that like she pretty clearly walks into a trap, even thinking to herself, "Was this a trap?" No.
mhm. Well, I think it's just that she thinks so lowly of her, like of other people in general, that she thought it was a trap, and then she was like, they wouldn't do that.
No one's smart enough
They're
to
not.
do a trap.
No one's smart enough to trap me. You really want to fight me? Shadow Stalker asked her opponent, a note of incredulity. Is that how you say that?
That's right.
Incredulity in her voice. She raised her right crossbow, the one with the lethal ammunition. Skitter didn't reply.
Yeah. And so Vale had said at some point back, she does have Stalker right in her name. Creep is implied. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that the branding people let her get away with being called Shadow Stalker, but I guess it fits her power really, really well.
Hmm.
So Shadowstalker kind of admires Skitter for a moment for her viciousness. Right as she decides to attack, Skitter fires the pepper spray, forcing her into a defensive stance, and she manages to avoid the worst of it. But Skitter starts running.
Good runner, but I'm faster.
Aside from the normal speed bonus of her shadow state, Skitter also has to wade through the water and muck on the ground. So Shadowstalker is doing like wall kicks and shit to keep up moving, and she's staying above the water line. And she pops off a shot with her lethal bolts, but misses.
Reflexes. Shadowstalker brushed away at the bugs massing around her. Or do your bugs help you watch what I'm doing? Disturbing little freak.
Yeah. So Skitter uses a fire escape to get past a fence, and Shadowstalker is getting pretty cocky before she tries to shoot through the fence and realizes that she almost used her shadow state to pass through an electrified fence. She confirms with Tinker lenses that she wears that the chain link fence is electrified and getting power from a nearby generator. It was pretty clear to me from what's described that it is set up for this purpose and this purpose alone. Like there is a
Yeah, I
singular
don't know.
wire taped like or nailed up to the wall or whatever the hell. And
Yeah, I guess like the only other thing could be like, oh, like just 'cause shit has been so crazy in town lately, like I don't know, like a gang set it up or something for
yeah, they do
whatever
say it's
reason.
like possibly local set it up, but that just seems so unlikely.
I
It
it just looks
smells real bad here. Like it's real fishy.
it just looks so specific, and then like the fact that she like started climbing the fire escape and then used it to jump over the fence, like
Like she
what,
perfectly
I don't
knew.
know. Sh she perfectly knew what to do to get around the fence.
Also,
Um,
like it just occurred to me that Skitter could have sold the illusion even harder because her costume does dampen electricity to the point where she might have just been able to like climb this. Huh.
that's true, but I think
It's
she's not
hard to
like
climb
very
a
good at
fence like that though.
moving when that happens.
Yeah, it's still off-putting.
Yeah.
Vale says it also needed a sign like Skitter this way to trap with a big red arrow. Yeah. Um anyway. So let's see here. Yeah, so somehow not realizing this is a trap, she continues the pursuit, deciding that Skitter just scoped out the area before stealing the supplies. Shadowstalker frets a bit about the idea that Skitter not only saw her face but knows her weaknesses. Skitter starts with the swarm clones, as she does now and will continue to do going forward. even makes it look like they like fall over and stuff when they get hit by crossbow bolts, really taking the effort to sell the illusion, which pays off because Shadowstalker attacks the wrong like clone and like does a big spin kick, which leaves her stuck for a second. Um,
Hmm.
the swarm is starting to get like denser in this area, and now there are four swarm clones. And Shadowstalker manages like a big play where she attacks three of the decoys and still pounces on the real Skitter all in one go, forcing her down in the water. It's actually pretty impressive. Um, and then
Using one of her
hmm,
non-tranquilizer bolts from the cartridge, she held the point of the ammunition to Skitter's throat like a knife. Game over, you little freak.
yeah, yeah. So Skitter looks up at her but doesn't say anything, and then Shadowstalker yells at her a bit, trying to get a reaction. And then Skitter lays back on the ground into the water, going limp. And Shadowstalker tries to cut her throat with the bolt. The fabric didn't cut. Skitter starts flipping out, trying to escape again, now that she's seen how far Shadowstalker is willing to go. And Shadowstalker pins her down, deciding to kill Skitter with her power, but needing to find something to like fuck up the body with afterward to hide the signs that would point back to her. Um, the perfect crime to smash someone with a rock. Um,
Yeah, after already, slitting their throat.
yeah. I think she intended to like phase it more into her stomach and then unphase it and then just bash the area a bunch.
Hmm.
Like pretty gruesome stuff, honestly.
It's
Um,
just goofy that she like doesn't, I don't know, like think of a way to just lift her mask up to cut her throat.
yeah, and I didn't detail it exactly, but she's kind of doing this thing where she's usually in shadow state, and if Skitter tries to get up at all, she goes back to human form and like forces her down again.
Hmm.
It's like she doesn't have to expend effort to struggle on her when she's not trying to get up. It's like a whole thing. She's not left vulnerable for like a surprise swipe. It's
Hmm.
it's an aspect of her power I wouldn't have thought of if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But as she looks around, Gru's darkness sweeps over the area, and she immediately gets up to run away, but she can't maintain her shadow state in the darkness because she's not getting enough oxygen to her cells, and reverts to a middle ground between her normal two forms, human and shadow. And then,
He baited me. A massive shape tore through her, dissipated her entire body. She pulled back together, but it was hard, painful, and uncomfortable on an unspecific fundamental level. It left her breathing hard, feeling like she'd just put her body through 5 hours of the hardest exercise of her life. Enervating. Was that the word? Bugs were gathering inside and around her body, making it a little harder and a little more time consuming to pull together.
that was indeed the word. They keep the pressure on. Right before she pulls herself together, another dog slams through her. She's got no gas left in the tanks, barely able to stand up, and Regent uses his power on her to make her drop one of the crossbows. All of the Undersiders come out of the shadows now that Gru has dismissed his darkness. Um, Hellhound is here with four dogs partially powered up, size, like pony sized. Gru's a silhouette of darkness, and then she thinks about her first loss to him and her grudge to drive him out of the city. There's a cape we haven't seen before as well. Uh,
Wearing a black scarf and a pale gray mask with pointed horns arching over the top of her head. The eyes of the mask had lenses that were black from corner to corner, stylized to look fierce, more animal than human.
mm-hmm. I wonder who that is.
Mm.
Tattletale, Regent, and Skitter are there as well. Shadowstalker asks if all the drama at the hospital was some kind of trick. Skitter shakes her head, no. Shadowstalker tries to get up for a moment, and Angelica growls until she slumps back down.
Well, she spoke, her tone sarcastic. How wonderfully fucking nice for you that you guys patched things up. You even have a new member. Congratulations. I guess everything's back to normal for you freaks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Using her swarm voice to cover her real voice, Skitter says, "No, things are different now." And then Skitter takes Regent's scepter. I mean, longer pause, but I wasn't gonna do the whole pause. Uh, Skitter takes the Regent taser that we know is in the scepter and tases Shadowstalker for just a moment. She has to actively suppress her instinct to go into her shadow state. So tasers are like super dangerous, but people don't think of them that way. The description of being tased sounds pretty bad, and it only happened for a moment, whereas in real life they're often applied for extended periods of time, which can cause permanent injury or death. And this is a form of police brutality that's been completely normalized in America for years. So it's good that in this portrayal, it's like actually weighty. Um,
Mhm.
so that's I like that. Vale says it's another Vista, probably. Um, so here it's she's huffing out small breaths, unable to get up as her limbs are unresponsive. An impotent rage swells inside her, and they start to pick her up to move her. Gru spoke from behind her. Skitter, lift her legs. Regent, support her midsection. Imp, give me a hand with her upper body. Take the other shoulder. We lift on three, all right? Right, someone said. 1, 2, 3. And the chapter's over. And the dog really wants in and out a lot right now. Anyway, so yeah, the imp. I wonder who
Yeah.
that is. I've never
I wonder
heard
who that
of imp
is.
before.
Yeah, weird.
I thought I had read this book a lot. Um. Anyway, so I had some final chapter thoughts that I actually wrote down this time. I like how there's a surface level of the stuff that Sophia thinks about directly and the things that you can read between the lines on. She states a bunch of her worldview in her thoughts, but there's also an undercurrent of her constantly seeking out fights, being violent, because she like can't be alone with her own thoughts. She has a lot of undealt with emotions that are spilling out of her like all the time. When she lashes out at Vista, the weird conversation she has with Emma, all of her like kind of like pointed thoughts about Gru and stuff, even though she had no idea she was going to see him tonight. Um, I think it's got a really strong character voice in this chapter, even though it's a little subtle about it sometimes. Like, because I read the chapter maybe 4 or 5 times while I was doing the write up, and yeah, because I usually just spend a lot of time thinking, not knowing what to write.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I really like these chapters. I think I mean Sophia calls Skitter a freak 4 times, which I think is funny. Um or maybe she calls Taylor a freak like when she's thinking about her, and then she calls Skitter a freak more times. She should have put two and two together, I'm just saying.
that little freak.
She's like has very that's one thing about Taylor is that everybody I think later like um somebody's thinking about her and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, who's that tall and scrawny?" But they don't even
Who do
think
I know
about
who
the
has
fact.
this exact hair thing going
Yeah,
on?
she has like
The
very
same
specific
hair.
hair. Like insane, like really curly, like black hair that's like obviously like on a white person or whatever, which is just not very common.
Yeah, I would expect it. It kind of looks like that. The like really densely curly like Italian hair kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what I expect given her background.
Yeah, and like how many people did you go to high school with who had that exact exact hair plus the body type and the height?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just feel like, well, probably Sophia's. Well, Greg says to be fair, I suspect Sophia thinks of a bunch of people as dismissively. Maybe that means as dismissively as possible, or something. But yeah, I agree. I was gonna say she thinks such a low, like Taylor is so low in her mind that it couldn't possibly be connected to Cape business. Um,
Yeah, that's true. She's like the bottom of the totem pole.
yeah,
And I think she thinks of them in different categories where Taylor is a rat, but Skitter is another predator.
yeah, exactly. Um, Vale had said, "This is a favorite chapter outside of the best things I've ever read chapters, mainly because Taylor is back and it's so great to see her in action."
Yeah.
Um, Vale had said, "Spindly, gloomy girl with a unique hairstyle." And then Greg says, as dismissively as she thinks of Taylor and Skitter.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, I think I want to move on to the characters section.
Sure.
We didn't write a lot of stuff. I only had a big section, like a big section for Sophia here, but um, I guess we should probably talk about like Perrion and Flechette's relationship advancing. It's like literally a day later, and they're already kind of making eyes at each other. Um,
Yeah, they're being a lot. It's fine.
and they're like doing it in front of a kid and stuff. Um,
Yeah. Now I need to know how old Perian is. Hold on. I
yeah.
think I think we can say 19 because let's say her first year of college, she was 18 and like that was the really bad year or whatever. And then the next year she was like, I'm gonna be a fashion major. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Aryan parahumans.
Um,
It says age 21 possibly.
it says in the timeline that Sabo was born in 1990, which would make her 20 or 21.
Yeah, okay.
It's just a little
It's not
dicey.
it's a pretty big split in my opinion. And I guess I get that like Flechette is like I think that there's like a lot more age gap relationships that like seem sort of okay because it's like, oh, they're parahumans. They are like already um like their lives are just so different than like a typical person's life and they have so much more experience than a typical person because of like all the things that they've been through after like since becoming parahumans or whatever.
Yeah,
um
Lily born in 1993 confirmed. So it's a 3-year age gap. And
okay.
it's I guess it's like either 17 to 20 or 18 to 21. You know
Hmm.
what? It's it's hard to say. That's in the, realm where it's like maybe
In the
it's okay,
gray
maybe it's
zone.
not. Like that's pretty gray, 3 years at that age. It
Yeah.
Cuz it obviously widens as the younger person is older,
Hmm.
kind of thing. Like yeah, like at my age, the 4-year age gap upward, it feels like nothing. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so those two are doing their thing, and then we got Missy herself.
Hmm.
Um,
Which I did kind of go on a rant on
we
after
we've talked
Vale's
about,
comment.
yeah, quite a lot based
um
on what Vale was saying and what you were sort of clarifying.
yeah. I think that I think she's a good character. I just feel bad for her because she's like so like stuck on like this one specific thing that I get it. I feel like I remember being like talked down to as a child or whatever and you're like annoyed or whatever, but I don't know. I
Like,
think
what
that
the
she's
fuck? Why are they treating
convoluting
me like
her
this?
like
Yeah.
I just think she's convoluting her life experiences of like her battles and stuff to be like true life experiences.
Battles equals experience points equals
Yeah,
more mature.
like I imagine 18-year-olds that go to war and come back like 2 years later haven't gotten any more mature, you know what I mean?
Right, right. Vale says, I hope my comments weren't too strong. I completely get what you were saying and can see the perspective and appreciate the point of view. Just kidding around about being wrong. Yeah, no, no
No, no,
worries.
no. I love goofing off and arguing about characters. That's my favorite
Yeah,
part of this. So
yeah. So we're all good there. Um, yeah, I think I like Vista a lot. I like that she has one of the most like interesting to me character arcs throughout the overall story. Um, but I mean, she doesn't change that much more than a different like normal setting character who would grow up. But it is interesting to watch her grow up.
yeah.
Um, And then the next people I'd want to talk about are the people in the briefing. We've got like Weld, Clock Blocker, Pigo, and Kid Win. Kid Win gets his little moment. Pigo seems human, and we love Pigo. We are a pro Pigo stream.
I personally love Pago. She's definitely one of my favorite non-parahuman characters. Like there's Danny and then there's Pago.
Well, I like a few more than you. I really like Stan Vickery, Quinn Kaye, and then Glenn. I really like Glenn.
Glenn, yeah, 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 yeah. Glenn is up there too. I don't know. I think it's just so fun um when non-capes get like involved in cape things.
Yeah, yeah. And when they like, I like it better. Like, I obviously like Danny as a character, but the cape non cape dynamic that I'm most interested in is the like Glenn and the Quinn kind of aspects where those two characters really, and like Pigot too, they're really like on the level of the parahumans, I feel like.
Mhm.
Um Even though they have no powers, they're just like they get it kind of.
Yeah, and I think you have to like it seems like if you didn't, you would just not make it in this industry.
Right, right. Um,
Sigma said Kinwin gets a win. Everyone is astonished. This has never happened before. Yeah, it is like he is like very pleased and like when Pago compliments him, I kind of would expect him to be like, okay, whatever. But he's like, yeah.
Noise.
Um,
Winning.
winning.
Uh,
I feel like we learned a lot about like Weld's a lot more about Weld's personality this chapter. Because he's been kind of a dipshit in the last time that we saw him in the Clock Blocker chapter, I guess.
yeah, in
Um,
the Vista chapter, I feel like we get a lot of Weld content.
yeah, so he's just trying to he's just definitely trying like genuinely his best. I think he addresses the situation with Vista pretty well. And it works on her, which like doesn't always you know, sometimes you have your best intentions, but like it doesn't really get through or like change anything. But like this specific talk was like exactly what she needed. Um
It's like the ideal scenario for this type of thing from both of their perspectives, really.
Yeah, it just went like perfectly, except when he was like, "You're such a nice young lady." Personally, I didn't like that part, but listen, it worked out. Um, so yeah, it's just good to see some more Weld positivity after he was a real dipshit in Clock Blockers chapter,
Mhm,
being
mhm.
like, "Okay, everybody, don't ask questions. We're watching the lecture."
And kind of like a dipshit in the I I don't know if this is just me on rereads or what, but like when he was talking about like we need to set up the patrol schedule, like let's not worry about if the Slaughterhouse Nine were in town, I'd be thinking like maybe we don't do patrols.
Yeah, like what are you talking about? Val said at least he didn't call her a good girl, which did happen in Kid Win's chapter, right? He was like, good girl.
Yeah, well, I think he
He
thinks
just
no,
thinks
Clock
it.
Blocker thinks it. Clock Blocker thinks it. That's Dennis.
Oh my God.
Let me double check on that,
It
but I'm
makes
pretty
me
certain.
personally, and not to throw any shade at Wildbow, but I think it's a Wildbow thing because Gru also calls Skitter good girl
I
a
was
couple
gonna
times.
say, and then I think there's a moment where Colin does it too, at some
Yeah.
point. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
like a
I definitely
triple
think so.
whammy. It's Brian, Dennis, and Colin.
So I think that Wildbow must think it's much more endearing than it is.
Yeah, well, maybe I would hazard a guess, depending that just I mean, depending on who you are and what time period, it's less ick, and probably, you know, 11 years ago or 12 years ago, geez. Uh, or no, this was 2012 by the time it's this far. So yeah, like 11 years ago, and from his perspective, it probably doesn't ring as ooh as it does to you or I.
Yeah, and it's just also that it's always coming from men too, though, that I think makes me like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. If a lady's giving me a good girl, I'm like, hmm?
Yeah, that's different.
Hmm?
Completely agree. I don't know why it got a super negative connotation. It's just that I think that more people have expressed that that's not like the ideal way to talk to a lady.
Yeah.
I think it's good intentioned, just like Weld when he was saying that Missy was whatever he said about her today. Um
Oh, and we get a little detail on Clock Blocker that just sort of is expected, but like cements his character of he's the most hesitant at the idea of Chariot joining the team and seeing his face and stuff because he's the only person who has like a family that he cares about.
yeah, exactly. And also I felt bad because he was the last person to answer, so like he kind of couldn't say no at this point.
Right,
Like
right. It
it's
was
just
Kid
one of
Win
those
second
like
to last because I feel like he's the only other person with anybody to lose.
um, let me look real
I think
quick.
it's Shadowstalker agrees next after the out of town capes. Let's see here. Weld. Boop, 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 boop. Um,
Um
yes. It's Weld first, and then Flechette next, and then Shadowstalker, who didn't seem to care, then Kid Win, then Vista, then Clockblocker. Which,
mhm.
I would almost expect it to be Vista before Kid Win because, like, I mean, from her perspective, like, fuck her parents, fuck everything.
Yeah, but Vista is also like, I want to be a good team member and stuff. So she probably like it hit the majority and she was like, that's good enough.
Gotcha. Yeah,
And
that
so
makes
just
sense.
agreed with it. Yeah.
Yeah, she was giving them more of an out. Got it. I
Hmm.
mean, that makes sense. She like does think in ways like that because like she's I feel like she's pretty savvy for her age, despite everything we've
Yeah.
said.
I mean, she's definitely like like socially intelligent. I don't think that she like makes any like faux pas except like being like had been so blatant about her like being into Gallant or whatever. Like that's the only like thing that other people noticed about her and were like, "Oh, what a dork."
Right, right, yeah.
But like she knows when to step away, like when Flechette and Perrion are talking to each other and then she like specifically like waits for like an opening to talk to them and then she smiles about the gift even though she doesn't like it. Like she doesn't um she's very polite in that way. And if you said like her parents are like well off or something, like maybe it's some kind of it had to do with her upbringing and like a lot of focus on appearances and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah. I think we can jump on to Sophia stuff, which I actually had more direct written out. Do you want to read this quote stuff since I'll probably be reading all these bits?
Sure. She had enough solidity for her body to seize the air molecules as they passed through her, and in this manner, each of her cells nourished itself. It was strange to feel so still. She lacked even the most basic processes and routines that normally kept her body going. Things people rarely give a second thought to. There was no near silent roar of blood in her ears, no need to blink, no production of saliva in her mouth, or movement of food and water in her gut. She just existed. But the movement of the air through her body made her feel just as alive, more alive, in a very different way. Changing back brought a sudden, thunderous restarting of her heart, a shudder running through her entire body as her bloodstream jerked back into motion. It only lasted the briefest of moments as she bent her knees and threw herself forward.
So I was thinking, whenever she's in her shadow state, she feels totally fine and even more alive than usual, in a way that she can't find other places. And when she stops and is brought back, she's got her regular human body and she feels the like essentially painful jerk. Um, and this is literally true and can also represent the way that she keeps fighting and hurting people to keep herself in this ungrounded state where she doesn't have to face her past or her own emotions.
Mm.
Um, and then, sort of connected, but kind of a different thought, is that Sophia admits that she wants Emma to come back to Brockton Bay. Now that she doesn't go to school, she probably only interacts with her family and/or the wards since the Leviathan attack, and she basically doesn't have anyone she's like her genuine self with. Not to say that Emma and Madison are good influences, but I was thinking about how being so isolated would probably make her slowly spiral out of control even if she hadn't fallen for the trap that was set for her here.
Yeah, I was thinking like in this chapter, I feel like even though she's like, "Oh, I want Emma to come back or whatever," I don't think that she like values Emma in any way except for like
A
the
sounding board,
services
kind
that
of.
she provides for
Yeah.
her. Yeah. Like she doesn't I don't think she likes Emma as a person. Um
Well, I think it's kind of twofold. I think it's like, I really do think it's nuanced. I think you're right, but I also think there is a sub level where she doesn't admit to herself how important the, like, just human connection of Emma is because she doesn't have anybody else, like, at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like she takes Emma for granted when, like, this is not a normal scenario. Like, she will be hard pressed to find another, like, relationship similar to this that, like, she can just, like, be totally, like, authentic or whatever, and people won't freak out.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I don't know, it's kind of sad. I feel like Emma, like, really, really values Sophia, and it's just not as
It's like
reciprocated
literally
as it should
sad
be.
from both directions, and
Yeah,
how
exactly.
do you help either of these people not be terrible? Like, where is their road to redemption? And like,
Yeah.
obviously, I get the whole like idea that they would need to find it in themselves, but that really isn't going to come if they like, given the current set of circumstances, there is nothing that would spur them into change.
Yeah,
So
especially because it's like you kind of think like most people, if they're like this far off the deep end, they need something like really drastic in their life to like be a slap in the face. But the problem is that the they're both like this because of something that really drastically happened to them. So now I don't know where to go from there.
yeah, yeah.
Together, there's no way they feed off each other. I don't know. I feel like they could. I will write a fan fiction where Emma and Sophia redeem themselves
Oh
and
crap.
become.
I let me find it. I want to read. I know it's a little. Oh, I'll read it in the bonus section, which I'll move up before the arc roundup. That's the poem you made. Um,
Okay, sure.
do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We can do that at the end or something.
Okay, I just thought
Um,
that was so funny, and I forgot to do it last week.
yeah, that's funny. I was gonna talk about
Hmm.
as far as Sophia goes.
Hmm.
This is like before she like gets into the weeds of her worldview, like I pretty much like agree and understand where she's coming from until she's like, and then there's rats and there's sheep and there's predators. And then you're like, whoa, girl, what are you talking about? Because the basis of what she's thinking is totally right. She's frustrated with everybody acting like things are so much worse now when like these are things that she's been dealing with. Like I can only assume from this and from what we learn later that she's like her family's somewhat like impoverished, like a little bit more so than Taylor. Um and they have like a bigger family situation. It isn't just two people, like that Danny's supporting.
Right, and
Um
I mean until the last 2 years, Taylor has had, or yeah, 2 years, I think. Taylor has had two parents who both had full time jobs.
yeah. So like and I've heard like similar sentiments from other people like, oh, everybody's acting like things are getting worse and worse, but like they've already been this bad for the people who have been at the bottom, and nobody was doing anything and nobody was paying attention or like trying to make things better until it affected like this majority of people or like this privileged set of people. And
Right.
so I think that's like where Sophia is definitely the most empathetic. Like I totally get where she's coming from there. She's bitter because like she's been dealing with it. She feels like the stuff with Leviathan is like hardly any different than what she's been dealing with her whole life or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand like how frustrating that could be, that like like what she said, like it ripped the veneer off the city, like the boardwalk and all of the uh like the well-off places in town now um aren't there to like cover up the like grossness and like
And
poverty of the rest of the city.
even the like the boardwalk itself had like a like mm, almost out in the open like set of violence happening to
Mm,
enforce uh I mean not even just like normal laws, but like to have the basically martial law of the shopkeepers.
yeah. Vale said a person who wants to get better with a good therapist can learn to live with slash through whatever they need to learn. The problem with the two of them is that they don't think they need to change. They think they have achieved a great place. And then Sigma says, nothing worse for recovery than a community that supports your bad behavior. Worth noting that Sophia is black in a city where the E88 is one of the most powerful groups. Yeah, like she just, I think, and she doesn't talk about herself like being black in her chapter, but I think it's like definitely related. Like all of her, here's all her like white coworkers being like, "Oh, things are so hard now." And she's just like, "Shut up." It's very similar to, Miss Militia. Um except in the
Mm-hmm.
way that they respond to it, where she's like, I don't understand your complaints, like I've just been through so much worse, and like why are you saying this to me? But she just kind of tolerates it. um and I don't think that's I don't think that's like a good mindset to have. Obviously, like you shouldn't be comparing people's trauma and hardships like that.
Well, right, but I mean
But
that's the conclusion that Miss Militia comes to, is what you just
yeah.
said. So.
Yeah, and it's not the conclusion that Shadow Stalker comes to.
Right.
She comes to like this weird power balance kind of idea that she needs to kind of make herself feel better about her position in the world.
Miss Militia is actually able to do very well in like a like massively changing like social and political landscape over the next
Mhm.
several years, because she lives in the moment in a real way and she
Mhm.
understands the current situation and isn't like she's just like able to keep herself um like in perspective
Yeah. And I think it feels to her like really similar to like the changes that she's already gone through in life. Like her entire life being uprooted and moving to America, and how she talks about like as soon as she feels like she's getting a grasp of things, like everything changes again, and she's treated like, oh, like why don't you know this?
Right. Right.
So she has a lot of experience with dealing with those kind of drastic changes, in a way that
Yeah, she's been in
most
like
people
alternate
don't.
cultures her whole life since she was
Yeah.
like a tween
Mhm.
or earlier, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but
But that was me being nice to Sophia. Like, I get it, girl. But then, like, the way that she expands on that is so, if it even, like, followed her own logic, that'd be one thing, but it doesn't.
yeah,
It's
I
just
really
embarrassing.
feel like she kind of contradicts herself on like a paragraph by paragraph basis. It's just kind of like whatever sentence needs to be said to keep myself on track.
Yeah.
Um, and then I wanted to pull out this Director Pagot, who had kept her out of jail thus far because she fit into the woman's overarching agenda of PR and the illusion of a working system. I couldn't quite crystallize my thoughts, but I thought that this was an important pullout that, like we see in 9.1, Pigot being very frank with Weld in the helicopter and telling him essentially this idea that she has, how she feels about this, and then so the way that Shadowstalker thinks about it is like understanding that that is the true belief of Pigot, and then like leveraging that into um, what she needs to facilitate her like uh, probation, her violence, like whatever.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see, like, from these chapters that Shadowstalker is the one who respects Pico the most, because you would really think it would be the opposite. Like, I
Yeah, that
think
she wouldn't
I think
respect
Soph
authority or whatever.
yeah, I think Sophia gives off the vibe that like she wouldn't respect authority even if they were doing something for her, which is kind of like where Taylor's coming from. But it's definitely not the case. Like
I think that'd be like a more generic character. I think that she's more nuanced than that.
yeah, she does respect authority even though it's not like obvious externally, because the because I guess because like the system has kept her safe so far.
There's there's a there's a way that she thinks about it. So she says there was a need for that kind of person in society, someone willing to step on others to get to the top, do what was necessary so that they could keep the wheels spinning. Yeah,
Yeah. She just buys into society. What a loser.
yeah. I feel like that is like a huge gap between me and a lot of people. I feel like, oh, I just don't buy into society like you do. Like, I don't
Mhm.
just believe in all the cultural myths.
Yeah.
And then I guess we're done with the Sophia stuff. We'll
Mhm.
get to Emma briefly. What do you want to
Um,
say on Emma?
Emma was being a real beta this chapter. Like she just sits on the phone and like waits, which like I said, relatable. I've literally been the Emma in this situation, like waiting for the other person to figure out whatever they're figuring out.
Right. Well,
Um,
I was gonna say I think this is probably like mm, maybe not to everybody, but when I read this for the first time, we were going like, just audiobook, normal speed, and it was like it had sort of not occurred to me yet that Emma was not the leader of the trio because that's just like the way Taylor's framed it the whole time. But the
Hmm.
truth is like revealed plain and simple. Like Sophia is the top dog, and then Emma is kind of like a large rung below her, and then Madison's not even on her radar.
Yeah, Madison, like she doesn't mention Madison this entire chapter. She does not care about Madison.
And there is no fourth girl for her, so it's just like, yeah, she thinks about Emma, Pigot, Taylor, Grew.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then like her teammates to a lesser degree.
right, right.
Um, yeah, it's really oh, poor Madison. But yeah, Emma just is like there for her and to like support Sophia, and I think she definitely like lives vicariously through her. Like I think her mentioning like at the end like, "Okay, well call me afterwards and tell me what happened, what went down." And then like starting the conversation with being like, "Yeah, it has all these things that I like. I'm really bored though." Because I think that if Sophia wasn't in the picture, I think Emma would be happy to have just moved to Portland.
Yeah, and another thing is like, I think for Emma, how to say, it's like she she's so like she's in such a weaker social position than Sophia. She's not like able to she's not able to play hard in their like dominance relationship ever. So she will never be like the top one, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting because Emma is the one who's in power socially, like both just in the aspect of high school and stuff, and with like an influential dad and lots of money that can like get them things that they want and like keep them out of trouble and stuff. Um, but yeah, she's just not ever gonna, even with those like advantages over Sophia, like she's still gonna be way lower on the rung.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Vale makes
Um,
a ward joke. She'd be so flippin' mad if she knew she didn't even get a thought from Shadowstalker. So that's for all your ward heads out there. Um, and then Greg had said, "Meta who?" Madison's the Heather McNamara of the group,
Heather McNamara is my favorite.
and yet you hate Madison.
Yeah, sort of.
I wasn't sure if you were finally gonna say like I've changed my mind on Madison, but you've always said in the past that you hated.
I hate Madison because
Yeah,
she doesn't even,
she's such
the
a
fact that she's
beta.
not even on Sophia's radar, like she's just mean for no reason. She doesn't get anything out of it.
Yeah. Well, I know she's in on some of their like group texts, so I know that she is definitely the third girl, but like I think that's mostly due to like Emma's continued presence and there's not like a big Sophia Madison connection.
Mhm.
But and then Vale says maybe Emma's bored because she never leaves her room in Portland. The family comes back because it's the only place she feels safe. Maybe, who knows?
Mm.
I mean, I'd imagine she'd feel safer not in Brockton Bay.
Yeah, but she doesn't have her bestie to take care of her, to murder people who get too close to her.
Yeah. Don't stand so close to me.
Oh, and Emma doesn't love murder, but she does tolerate it. That's the other thing we learned about her.
True, true.
I guess that's something we didn't even say about Sophia is that Taylor has referenced multiple times that Sophia went too far with beating up a villain, but actually she has killed at least one person. Um
And
and I
it's
feel like it's
unclear to
implied that it
me.
happened at least
I
once, more
I
than
was
once.
gonna say it's unclear to me if the incident that the PRT took her in for was a murder. It may be that the reason that Tattletale doesn't know the extent of it is that Shadowstalker murdered other people and like nearly killed the person that she was brought in for.
Got it.
See what I'm
Okay.
saying?
I
Yeah.
just had assumed that the PRT covered it up that she had done a murder. But
It could
either
be.
way, we did learn this chapter that Sophia is a murderer, and she loves murder.
Yeah. Um yeah, I think that's all. I don't have anything more for Emma.
That's all.
Okay. And then the Undersiders.
The Undersiders are back together, but things are different now. Yet to learn what that is, except for the fact that there is a new member there named Imp, whose power we did not get to see yet. Um, and then this is like Vale mentioned, I think this is the first time we see Taylor fighting outside of her own perspective, and it's pretty good. She does like a good job, and I don't think she looks nearly as like flailing and anxious as she feels when you're inside her head while she's fighting. Because
Yeah, because
I
she's
think
like
she
cold
looks,
as shit. She seems like a weird psycho, if you ask me. Like,
yeah,
she really does come off as like kind of a creepy murderer. And I
yeah,
mean,
and and when and when you're fighting as Taylor, she's like just so like constantly anxious and thinking about like all the mistakes that she's making and stuff that it just comes off so differently. But I'm
can't believe
glad
I
that
fucked that
she
up.
looks so spooky when she fights.
I agreed. I love that she looks so spooky, but it made me think of like when speedrunners will like make a minor mistake in a world record video and be like, "I will never be good at a video game," which is a
Yeah.
direct quote from a world record.
Vale said she was so casual drawing a knife across Taylor's throat. That was not a first time event. I love the tactile feel of Taylor's words. Things are different now, when where she whispers it and the bugs basically shout it. Yeah, that's another thing to mention is a couple power changes. Um, Taylor is utilizing her bugs to cover up and emphasize her voice now, which I don't think she's done yet, because she's concerned that Sophia will recognize it. Um, which I wonder who could recognize her voice because it's definitely not Sophia, right?
I think Emma does in the opening. It could have been Sophia, but I got
Makes
the
more sense for it to be Emma.
yeah. I think that it just makes the most sense. So,
Yeah.
um, but she's paranoid about it either way.
Hmm.
She couldn't recognize their voices enough to tell who had said it's Taylor at the beginning, which is kind of shocking to
Yeah.
me between the three of them that they wouldn't have distinct enough voices. Um,
And then the other thing is Rachel has some new dogs that she is clearly training because they weren't very big and she had them on like harnessed up.
yeah, this is a more nuanced use than we've seen of Rachel's power up to this point, because like the pony dogs, it's just she hasn't been like going halfway before. And these are
Mhm.
ones that you couldn't like ride probably, but boy, you wouldn't want to fight them.
Yeah.
Um,
But she has to train him somehow because all of her dogs died.
Except Angelica, who's here.
Except, yeah, except Angelica.
Um, yeah, I'm glad to see Sirius make a return. Sirius and Bentley are two of my faves. And I think they make it through the whole book. Let's spoil it right now.
Oh my God, you can't say that. I
Um,
did like after like literally all the dogs we knew died after the Leviathan attack. I was like, man, these dogs are gonna get replaced quicker than I had thought. Like
right.
I thought it was just gonna keep happening.
Oof. Yeah. Well, I don't think there are other casualties, but I don't think there's
Mhm.
anything else like the Leviathan fight.
Yeah, nothing
Um,
as big and quick.
and eight at once.
Yeah.
Um, but then who else do we see? Gru's power is the identical to before. Um,
Yeah, I
Regent's
don't think
power is
that
totally
Gru
normal.
or Regent or Tattletale do anything special. They just stand there.
Yeah, it's just Taylor and Rachel really. But I mean, like the team takedown of Shadowstalker is just like an unstoppable force. It would have worked with like two less members, and they just completely have her defeated.
Yeah, I think it would have been fine with just Gru, Taylor, and a taser.
Right? Yeah. But they go all out.
Hmm.
Um, and then oops. So Ba-ba-ba. Do we want to say more about the Undersiders? I mean, the fact that they're back together is kind of a big reveal, I guess.
Yeah, it's a big reveal, but we'll have to see
What happens?
what changed, what happens.
Mm-hmm. I guess we can jump to the powers, knowledge, and world building. I did not put a lot here because I kind of already talked about like her power up earlier, but we'll talk about Vista's power briefly in a second. I wanted to say Shadowstalker uses little Tinker-made lenses to see electrical current through walls and stuff. And a good perk of being part of a larger organization is that you can get like non-standard resources like Tinker stuff, which is ridiculously valuable. Um, then also, we kind of talked about this a lot, but oh yeah, no. The reason I brought it up again is the whole thing about the cells nourishing themselves with air is actually the second time we've seen a power that can directly feed the user. The previous one is purity, can just take in light and not need food. She is photosynthetic. Yeah. And then, do you want to talk a little bit about Vista, even though we don't have anything written down? She sort of kind of
Yeah, we
glossed
get
over
like
it.
a big description of her using her power, which, like I kind of said, is I think been uh heightened by the fact that the city is in ruins. She can just kind of go wherever she wants now. Um,
I had thought about
let's
something while we were talking, while you were reading the like your read through, that her power is actually really good at um, finding people. And like, if she was to do emergency rescue, she could find people without needing to see or even have a possible sight line to them.
mhm.
Um, she can on a battlefield be like, okay, they're in that room because I can sense like three people's worth of resistance on the space warp.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like little perks to powers like that, that kind of get glossed over or like the user just doesn't like utilize it to their best ability. Like the fact that theoretically, like Vista could seek out people in a room she couldn't see, and so can Regent, which he'll use it in the dark, but he never like uses it to like scope out a room they're about to go into. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Um,
one of the things is like he literally is just lazy about the way he goes about the world. And
yeah,
like
that's true. He's like,
Vista's
maybe he does it and he just would only mention it if he thought there would be a problem. Um, Here's the here's Vista using her power. Vista stepped out into the middle of the road at the edge of the fissure, then concentrated. She felt her power extend to every solid object in front of her, formed a map in her head. There was nobody out there, which made it easier. Slowly, carefully, she began adjusting. She truncated the length of Lord Street, then did it again, repeating the process to make the four-lane road shorter and shorter and shorter. The fissure down the center of the road squeezed against itself like a compressed spring. Um, oh, we should probably mention Perion's power as well because we got to see it a
oh
little
yeah,
more
yeah.
in action.
We
Um,
yeah, we will in a sec. I wanted to pull out from just below that. When Flechette sees it, she goes, "This is disorienting. My power gives me a grasp of angles, and I'm worried that I might have a seizure if I try and use it to get a sense of what's happening here." And then Vista justifies, "It's not that complicated. Everything's like wet clay, and I'm smudging it around." Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah,
and
Parian.
then
Let's go up to
yeah,
the
we see
description.
Perion using her power, which I don't know if we've seen her make stuff with her power yet. We've only seen her with her giant stuffed animals. Um, she's very talented at it. I think that her power must at least give her. I know she doesn't have great multitasking ability, but it seems like she can like fully focus on it while also fully focusing on whatever like she's doing with her body. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think she gets at least that little benefit. She doesn't need to put all her focus into using her power.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where it says, but doesn't she kind of like do it without even looking in this case?
Yeah, it's like behind her. So that's another thing. Like another bonus of Parian's power is that she I believe has like a really good feel over like surfaces. She probably has an effect similar to Taylor's where she like knows exactly like how things are formed, what they look like, how they move and stuff because she can feel like the fabric on people when they're moving around and stuff, which is probably the reason why she's like so talented at fashion and like creating stuffed animals and stuff. Because honestly, like a huge portion of art is just knowing what things look like.
Right, right.
um,
Yeah, like having an
which
idea
she's
of what you're
very,
gonna do.
yeah, which she's very good at on a 3D level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um.
Vale said a couple things. I'm sitting here thinking through Shadow Stalker stuff, and there is a good side. She purposely chose to do heroic things instead of identifying as villain slash going that route. I think it has a bit of value. I guess my thought is basically the worst people who are pointed in a positive direction just have longer to get there if she only had the direction more strongly. And then Greg said, I'm interested in the level of control Perian has. It seems to be nearly as good as Taylor's. Yeah, the same. She can do both detail work and big stuff, all more or less on autopilot.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty impressive. There is stuff that she feels like limited by,
Material.
it's funny later on when somebody's like make a snake and she's like I can't do a snake. I can do like a giant wiener dog, but
I just think that a snake wouldn't be able to move if it's made out of fabric because isn't like
it would like I think it kind of is like coded in the like psychic energy, like the telekinesis. So I don't think it would like get torn up or whatever. Cause like stuff has to get hit by like Leviathan hits to get torn up.
yeah, but I'm thinking about like the anatomy of a snake, like the way that it moves must have
Yeah, yeah. It
something to
can't
do
do
with
like the
like
wiggle with its spine or whatever.
yeah. But I think Parian is somebody who limits her power incredibly.
Oh
Like
yes.
the fact that she's like, ugh, I can only do lame things like hold fabric, but then she can also hold things like needles and scissors. She could definitely just stab like so many people all the time.
Yeah, it's she's not like she's got a very strong power, but she's not good at being a parahuman. She just
She's
gets by
terrible
on
at
the
it.
fact that her power has like such a high base level of like strength.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with like if anybody else had Parian's power, they'd definitely be using it a lot differently. And I think with more success in my opinion, which doesn't necessarily like I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if she would find it successful.
And you know, I'm not saying that Perian doesn't get better as a cape as time goes by, but it's just like her starting point is so like non-confrontational, non-violent, like it just doesn't
Mm.
fit what you need to be a cape.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Vale said she should have made a giant centipede for Taylor, but cute. Yeah, I agree.
exactly.
She could have made never mind. Spoilies. She could have made Taylor a replacement Atlas.
Yeah, it flies and everything.
It flies and everything. It's so cute.
Woo! So unless we have anything more to add, I was gonna jump down to the bonus question mark. Um,
Sure.
and so my bonus question mark was me going to figure out a bonus, and then I remembered that I was supposed to read this poem, or not
Sure.
poem really, this short fan fiction. Taylor,
Yeah, I wrote a
mhm,
short fan fiction using AI. That's all.
the AI, was pretty good. Taylor and the Power of Bugs, or the Power of the Bugs. Taylor was a 15-year-old girl who had been through a lot of bullying in school. She had never felt so alone and helpless in her life. She had been struggling with her self confidence and feeling like an outcast. One day, After a particularly harsh episode of bullying at school, Taylor was walking home in a haze of sadness and anger. Suddenly, she felt a strange tingling sensation all over her body. Her skin started to glow, and she felt a powerful energy radiating from within. Before she knew it, Taylor had gained the ability to control bugs. She could feel their movements, understand their language, and even control them with her mind. She couldn't believe it. She had been given a superpower. Taylor was now able to use her newfound powers to help her get back at the bullies that had made her life so miserable. She could command the bugs to do whatever she wanted, from annoying the bullies with buzzing sounds to making them look silly by crawling all over their faces. Taylor was ecstatic. She could finally take control of her life and make things better. She was no longer a victim of bullying. She was a superhero. With the power of the bugs at her side, she was ready to take on the world.
I love it. I think it did a pretty good job. It was like literally a one sentence prompt. I think I said something like, 15-year-old Taylor develops uh superpowers after a particularly bad spat of bullying at school or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Silly bug-faced bullies. Making them look silly is what is happening when bugs crawl up over somebody's face.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we were just making Clock Blocker look silly at the bank robbery. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. It was just silly, goofy. She was just in
It
a
was a
silly, goofy
goof.
mood. I like that she can understand their language.
Yeah, that was the funniest part to me. Um, I did not think up a second bonus idea. If you have one, feel free. But otherwise, I'm just gonna jump into
Well, that's
this.
fine. We can move on to the roundup.
The roundup, Arc 9. So, this arc is a unique treat. We get to see from the perspective of each member of a hero team forming a story from the events of a day and a half of their lives in the wake of the Leviathan attack 18 days ago. First, we start from the outsider perspectives. Weld arriving as the new team leader, we get to see Pigot from the perspective of a new subordinate who doesn't know her yet, and Weld starts off on a bad foot with Clock Blocker. They also use this chapter to throw in a bunch of world building about the PRT classifications and Pigot's priorities. Vale says, many/most public AI have been fed worm. I remember threads about it years ago on Reddit. They're just so fun. Yeah, they're pretty funny when they're going. But I thought it was impressive how close to the real story it was with such a basic ass prompt. So, yeah. You got anything to say about the weld zone?
No, we love Weld, even though he looks like a dipshit for the like almost the entire arc. But he makes up for it later, don't worry.
Really, in the clock blocker chapter the most. He just seems like a real.
Yeah, and like that part, it was not like Clock Blocker obviously makes it worse with his perspective, but the things he was doing, I would have also been annoyed about.
Yeah, same. Greg says makes sense. Not surprised they'd be fed a bunch of publicly available pros. Yeah. The next set is Flechette's chapter, arriving, and we see her in her first patrol out, which she takes like as soon as possible. Basically, she arrives in the city and is already finding Shadowstalker, and then Shadowstalker reveals herself in a way that puts a rift between them, and then Lily finds someone to latch onto in Brockton Bay, going to meet Parian. And also, we see how much of a fucking vandal that Flechette is when she's running around
Oh
the
my
city.
god, it's so bad, dude. I don't know. She actually just has a special power that makes her not worry about public destruction.
Yeah, her not give a fuck power. Vale says, in Clockblocker's chapter, Weld comes across like the school student hall monitor who thinks being a student hall monitor is really cool. Yeah. And Clockblocker's chapter is next. You know what? Actually, I did want to go. We'll do it after we've said all this stuff. I wanted to go art by art and have you just give a little perspective on each one because I know that like you weren't super happy with all of them, but I just was interested to have that sort of said on the stream.
Oh, on the clock blocker one, I used the wrong brush for the line art, and it wasn't until after I started the next one that I realized I used the wrong brush, and now I'm pretty sad about it.
Oh shit.
Which like it's not like amazingly obvious, but I was like, man, Clockblockers just doesn't look as comic-y as the rest of them, and it's because I fucking used the wrong brush. Um, but this is him boarding class. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's see here. So clock blocker. I guess if we've already done the clock blocker, let's just hit him at. Weld. I think this one was very very successful. What are your thoughts on the weld?
Sorry, I was waiting for it to pop up on my screen.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
happy with it. Since it was the first one, it's like, I need to get in the groove of a style. But I was happy
Mhm.
with the design. I didn't like up to this point, I guess I didn't understand some of the implications that Weld like sort of is black. So I had to like redo my design as I was reading it. That's the only thing I could gauge by that weird comment where he got mad that some guy called him son. Um,
Yeah,
and then like
and I
having like really short cropped hair or whatever. I thought that probably was
yeah
happening there.
they don't they don't like say it in Worm. I think ever, but when Armstrong shows up in Ward, then it's just like, and Armstrong is black.
Yeah.
And it's like,
So
oh, that's the thing with Weld.
yeah, like he doesn't say it, nobody else says it, but it's like, oh, okay, well it was black, so I had to redo my design, and now I have like kind of a different picture of him than I did because I originally thought he had like silly like superhero boy hair, where it's kind of like a Lego man.
Yeah, like an anime guy kind of, but like the kind of the when they're supposed to look like a Western person.
Yeah, the really like smooth one. So yeah, but I was happy with that design. The Flechette one, I mean, it was always like reading through each chapter, I was like, oh, come on, like she's wearing her mask the whole time. Like I want to showcase their faces more. So that's something that I think will be a little bit hard if they ever did do like any sort of visual medium for what Worm because like I don't know, I feel like people's faces are really important.
Well, I think that people's faces are important, but I think one of my worries would be that they uncover a lot of the faces because there is supposed to be a communication gap made by the masks, and they talk about it more and more as the story, goes on, as you've of
Mm.
course seen. But it's like there's all these weird moments where like Taylor looks at somebody and she's like, I couldn't tell behind the mask, um, and that happens
Yeah, and
like
then I
a
have to
lot.
remind myself that they're wearing masks, or like all the times that Taylor smiles to herself and nobody saw it.
Yeah, yeah. And like
I
she
think
always
that's something
smiles to
you'd
her. She's like a Kit Fisto. She smiles when she does violence.
I think that's something you'd miss so much of is not being able to read Taylor's expression to get through to her thoughts or whatever because because obviously it would be third person and then like I don't know, she just has the full coverage mask.
Yeah, and it's not like
Um,
she has like a pliable mask like some people do, where you can sort of see as they change their expression. Like she has the mandibles on the front of it.
yeah. And then I decided because literally like everyone in this chapter wears a visor for their costume. Not everyone, but three of them do. So I kind of tried to mix them up as much as I could, and I made hers look like a snapback because I was thought it was funny.
It is
Like
funny, but
she's wearing like a backwards snapback.
it does look like that because she is kind of like a sleazy young lesbian.
She
Um,
is a sleazy hey mama lesbian.
But what I was thinking is, I do believe that she's got one of those like eye holes masks. Maybe I'm wrong, but the something that Saba says later is like, I fucking saw you checking me out.
Well, she must do it with her whole head. They call it a visor, but I don't know. It could be like see-through to some
Oh,
degree.
you know what I think it is? I think it's like one of those knight's visors that has like open center. Um,
Hmm.
let's see. Knight's visor. Um, because she is like kitted out to look like a weird knight, I think.
Oh, yeah. And then there was like her
Um,
visor has double red laser targeting.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like went up and down. Thank you, Vale. I'm glad you liked this one.
Yeah, I like this one a lot too. I just wanna whoop. That's right. I was clipping something to send. Just that garbage. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think it could look like that maybe. Um,
Yeah, that's nice.
but regardless, moving on. Since that moved us to the wrong thing, we are on clock blockers little section. Clock
Clock
blocker.
blocker.
Yeah,
I used the wrong pen. I did clock blocker so dirty. And I just had to do him unmasked because all the other ones, so many of the other ones were like masked the whole time. So,
yeah. Um,
and he has like the most stupid fucking costume ever.
he practically has. I feel like his costume is secretly a lot like Coil's costume. It
Mhm.
feels weirdly similar to me.
It's like, yeah, like the fact that there's no face on it, and then like it has like the fact that it has animated clocks on it is just so goofy.
Embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what might have been like a better way to go. I think I would have just gone for a traditional, like it didn't need to be thematic or anything.
Hmm. Yeah.
Especially because, I don't know,
Or it
not
could be
that
more
people
subtle,
wouldn't know
like
what his
Tattletales, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not that people wouldn't know what his power is, but like it's very, very clear what type of power it is if you're fighting a new person who hasn't fought you
Right.
before.
And I mean, the reason to not do that is because even though he's a big enough name to be like on a named team in an important city, he's still like someone that people don't recognize the power of when it happens in real life against Leviathan.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, he could definitely play it a little closer to the vest.
Hmm.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I not to put tons of work on your plate or whatever because it's just like a if it ever happens, but like you could like second pass this one. You had mentioned that like about other ones that you wanted to do over, and
Mm.
if we could get the missing chapters filled in, like I really do have a better memory of the chapters now that I can like call to mind the image that is one of the scenes in the chapter and I'm like easily
Yeah.
able to remember, and it's I can do that for basically the entire book up to the point we're at, which like I obviously knew the book well before, but this is like more so.
Mm. That's nice.
It's like just to have any visual that's concrete to pull to mind, it like easily catalogs for me. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do the opposite where I go look at the arts to remember what happened in the chapter.
Yeah. Well, I mean it's similar though.
Hmm.
But yeah, Clock Blocker is the first perspective from someone who is there since Leviathan attacked. He's angry and lashing out. It seems like he's really living in the mindset of his power of if I just had more time, never in the right place, um, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I'm sure it's great for his cape work, but there's a bunch of new information about powers in the classroom scene. I think it's really cool. We see Glory Girl is maybe going to be on the team. Vista stands up to Clock Blocker about his beef with Weld, then gets the lash out and the apology. We see the scene transition because Wildbow's using them a lot more frequently, and they're feeling more natural, I think. then a fight scene starts giving us a really perfect transition point to the next chapter. But it's kind of a pointless fight scene in a way, but it's a place that we can see these two
It's
teams that we know
totally
fairly
pointless.
well just go ham on each other without like because the Undersiders are very interesting and entertaining, but they like fight in a really like they fight a lot differently than other Cape teams. I feel like every team has a totally different feel, and so it's good to see how other people are reacting to each other. And then you got any clock blocker thoughts before we move on?
No, I like Clock Blocker. I wish he'd been funnier. It seems like every time Wildbow has one of his goofy characters in a chapter, he'll be like, "Oh, but they're in a bad way right now, so they're not as goofy as usual."
I think he wasn't as funny when he wrote this stuff, and I think some of the stuff in Ward is just like
Yeah,
hilarious.
I think that like I think maybe he's gotten more in touch with his like his funny mindset. Um I think Krause's stuff is pretty funny even though he's in a bad way because that's like he kind of has the opposite of Clock Blocker
I
because
think
Clock
Cross is
Blocker
funny to me and you because we think like from my perspective, both you and I really like Kraus, and so when he's
yeah.
being a piece of shit, it's like really funny.
It is funny though. Cuz I mean he's kind of doing it to be funny but also because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah,
But Clockblocker is a little different than that. He tries to be funny to like, I think to like cheer other people up.
yeah. Um, Thinking about it, I do think that Wildbow gets pretty good at the like dialogue when he's writing later like Imp and Regent scenes.
Yeah,
I think
true.
they pair together really well in a way that'll let him like get better at that and work on it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Oh, and just to catch up on the chat, after the visor has double red laser targeting, Greg said, also, I think Flechette was being really obvious. Vils
yeah,
says, Saba's like, hey! And Lily be like, three eyes emojis. Um, Banter is easy to write. Good banter, though, that's much more difficult. And Vale shows some love for Imp and Regent scenes. I think we all love Imp and Regent scenes.
yeah.
And then next up, we get the Kid Win chapter. Let's talk about the art real quick. I feel like this turned out really well. I think it's great.
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I did cover his face Mike Wazowski style, but I thought it was funny. Because nobody in like the entire book describes Kidwin's face ever. Like they're like, this guy has brown
You
hair.
know, brown
Um,
hair.
I also gave him a different costume, like a helmet design than I have in previous arts, but I think
I
that
think
they
it's
even
literally
say like in
fine.
some scenes that his brown hair is wet, so I needed his hair out. Um,
Yeah.
and then yeah, I don't know. I think it turned out pretty good. I never know I never know where to put their ears when they're wearing helmets like this. So I made a little place, but in most of the Kidwin art, he also has like these little bulbs on the side of his head. So I was emulating that.
Yeah, no, I think it looks good. I think it all
Thank you.
feels very natural. But
Yeah, I need to get
mhm.
better at drawing guns because I don't know how guns work.
The good thing is
And
this is
there's
a
a
fake
lot of
one, you
guns.
know?
Yeah, this one was a fake one. But I like it more when it's a real one because if it's a real one, I can look it up and then just trace it or just
Mm,
copy it like
mm.
verbatim. But if it's not a real one, then I have to like think about it really hard. And
Maybe
that's
you
the
could
worst
look up
part.
like you could think of what you would think that kind of tinker's like aesthetic would be. Like, are they like a
Uh-huh.
ray gun gothic or whatever? And like he's not. He's like a standard tech boy.
He's like a
But
normal gun boy.
yeah, but like let's just say the tinker is like a ray gun gothic thing. Then you look up like two different guns and you just sort of crush the designs together till they're holding a new gun that you
Yeah.
you design.
I was
Um,
also thinking that he would have to make all his guns with like really big triggers because he is wearing gauntlets all the time.
that's a good
Which is
point.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, uh, Taylor will later describe him as looking like a hedgehog. So I do try to give hedgehog vibes. He doesn't look like a hedgehog yet, but whenever I draw him, I have hedgehogs in mind.
His Santa hair is growing.
Yeah. It's gonna get longer and spikier as we speak. Vale said my headcanon is all his munitions are reminiscent of 1950s terrible sci-fi with giant rings and garish colors. Yeah, I mean he is like a 90s boy naming himself Kidwin and having like a flying skateboard.
Yeah, yeah, he totally is. It's just like funny to think about. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Kidwin is delightfully cringe. Um, So Kidwin's chapter though, he takes the story mid-fight. He has muted interactions with the rest of the team because of how low his self-esteem is and sort of feeling of inferiority at this point in the story. We kind of see this turn around when he starts getting a few wins. Wins? That's right.
When?
In a row. And figuring out the Slaughterhouse Nine around town, recruiting Chariot, figuring out the Chariot as a mole, like all in a row. Um, and then there's also a continuation of the Clock Blocker chapter or payoff, depending on how you see it, where he's keeping his word to Vista and like working better with Weld. So like whenever you see stuff in a previous chapter, like it just this arc does a really good job of like building and building. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And then today's art Vista. We talked about it a little bit, but do you have anything more you wanted to say about it here?
I think Vista's cute. The only thing is that Vista straightens her hair to get in costume, and that's insane.
Because she's
Um,
going out into the wet streets.
First of all, it's she's going out into the wet streets. Her hair is going to be wavy by the time she gets back, and like oftentimes it's been raining during fights. And
Mm-hmm.
just like when she needs to go to do a fight, she has to go straighten her hair because like she doesn't straighten her hair right after her shower. So like I assume that she like just gets to it when she like before she goes on patrol.
It just seems like
Um,
so burdensome. I don't think she does that in the future.
I that might be true. I just know that and I don't think they ever say she straightens her hair, but it does say she has wavy hair when she's out of costume and straight hair when she's in costume, and that's funny.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Um,
Yeah, she's just a cutie. I do like drawing her. Every time I draw her, I'm like, "Aw."
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll read her little chapter thing here. Vista starts in big kid with big responsibilities. Flechette's story with Parian is moving forward. It's clear she's going to take any opportunity to see her. Vista's pretty fatalistic, but in a way that makes sense for a cape. Flechette hears her talk for one conversation and tells Weld she needs therapy. Um, it's nice to see Flechette fitting in better with the other wards than she did with Shadow Stalker. We see the briefing Kid Win had called together at the end of his chapter take place, and he shows increased confidence compared to before. Vista goes to see Weld, who's making sure to take care of his team and to get to know them, and ordering a round of therapy sessions for the whole table. Um, Vista tries to apply the things that she and Weld talked about with Shadowstalker, but then gets slammed to the ground for her trouble, and that's where it ends. Um, let's see here. So it's Kid Win, cringe. Triumph, respectable. Yeah.
True.
Triumph is a better name.
Well,
Um,
what if he called himself Kid Triumph? Like, I would make fun of him too.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Like that would be so stupid.
Is he
Um,
gonna like upgrade his name when Kidwin, well, if Kidwin makes it to adulthood?
yeah. Let's see here. Wanted to jump to the Shadow Stalker art. Uh, No, it takes a second to show for you. Teen Triumph, cringe. Yes. So I really like this one. I like her creepy mask. I like how she looks like a fucking creep.
Yeah, she looks like a creep. It was it's hard to draw when like people's faces are just masks, or sorry, when their masks are just faces, like it's hard to draw it to make it clear that it's a mask and not a face. I think it turns out very like she looks like either it's a mask or she's made of metal like weld. So that was kind of
Yeah,
the
I
right
think this
vibe.
one is good. I was reminded by this of like the fact that in Ward, there's that great scene where the character is wearing a mask of their own face.
Mhm.
Um, and this isn't that because it's an identity concealing mask, but it's still like a similar weird concept.
Yeah, it is a I think it's an even weirder I mean, okay, not that wearing a mask of your own face is normal, but if you wore a mask that like either like kind of like accentuated your natural face or like looks similar but was I don't know, like characterized in some way, but it says that she's wearing a mask of a stern woman.
Yeah, I figured it would
Um,
have to be a face pretty different from her own to not give like
yeah.
identifiers as to who she
So
is.
I did go very different from her own face, but
Yeah, because we've seen
her eyes
Sophia
also came
before, and
true.
like she looks totally different in your rendering of her. And like this mask,
Yeah.
I think has a really good like because I would never guess from this mask that it was the same person as Sophia from the bus or Sophia from the. I guess we don't see her face in the bookstore, but
Yeah,
it
and I
just
also
wouldn't
just
occur to
I
me.
kind of assume that her style's really different because like I don't know, wearing a cape with a hood on it just seems really different from her like civvy personality.
Yeah,
So
she's like
yeah,
a
I
real
think
like
she does a good
Raven
job at
personality rather than like her normal like just sporty with ponytail kind of thing.
hmm yeah. And I wasn't ever sure if the sporty with ponytail was just me making assumptions, because in my mind she looks uh like her style and body type is really similar to my sister's, so like I always emulate that.
Mm.
But I might have just made up that she wears a ponytail and sports clothes because I don't think they ever mention what she wears.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh, they mentioned
100%
she wears a
sure.
tennis outfit, but
Oh
I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
sure
because
if
that's what you were
that was
putting
like
her
her
in the little
day off
skirt.
of school, you know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like shorts or a skirt by the description, but like I think the thing you drew looked like that's what I think of now.
Yeah. Vale said, I like this art. Second best of the set. It's close. They are all good, but this has character to it beyond others. Yeah, I think I did the best on this one. Probably because it's the last. That's the thing is as I get like more comfortable with a style, it gets better and better, and then I have the desire to go back and redo all the other ones.
I guess if I was to rank it, it'd be like for me, this one, Kid Win, Weld, Vista, Flechette, Clock Blocker.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same ranking.
But yeah, rounding things out, we get Shadowstalker all alone, unable to relate to her only friend and ranting about how the disaster was a good thing. Stewing on the fight with Vista and her boredom, she overcommits to an attempted takedown of Skitter. Shadowstalker is captured by the Undersiders, signaling a return to Taylor's story. So yeah, I think this arc is it's a really good bridge between the first and second major movements of the story. It's good connective tissue in the story, serving both as an epilogue to everything previous and a prologue to everything in the medium term future. And then, given that Taylor was kind of maybe gonna die in Arc 8, then didn't, this arc acts as a way to reset the pieces to a position where the story can get back on track. And next arc will be a continuation of the same night. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for the not necessarily the upcoming arc, but like to get familiar with Imp and like whatever's gonna happen to Sophia.
Right. I think 10 is one that a lot of people feel is really weak, and we'll have to see how we feel. Generally, when I reread these like more, I think they're better. Like I had um a new appreciation for arc 4, a new appreciation for like the interlude in arc 2. Like
Hmm.
there's been several points where I'm just like, wow, this is better than I remembered. And I'm hoping this is
Yeah.
going to happen the same way because I do remember the first time arc 10 was happening kind of just being like, why are they doing all this?
Yeah, it's definitely seems a little silly, but honestly, like I think it's worth it to get the Alec and Dragon arc that we end with because not arcs, but
Interludes,
chapters,
yeah.
because I think those are like some of the best interludes and like oh my God.
And like the plan isn't as dumb as it seems if you think about the fact that like they literally work for Coil. They can do this thing where
You can do
they do a
anything, yeah.
plan or they like don't do the plan in the two timelines and they just wait, and if they're successful, then Coil keeps that one. And so there's literally no risk to them. And I mean
Yeah.
obviously there's always risk when parahumans are involved, but like it's just it's so ridiculously useful that they can get
Yeah.
away with these like foolhardy plans. Yeah. Oh, so we got oof, I'm so wrong thinking Flechette is the best one, darn it. And then things are different now, next arc. I don't think 10 is weak at all. I would say, or I say this to anyone who reads Worm, the second read is a different story. And then, how is Quinn enjoying it all so far? I don't think that Quinn's been keeping up since when he was on for 8.7 and 8.8. So, um, you know, you're up to date with his read.
Yeah.
um, but it does mean that we get the freshest, hottest takes when he is on. So that's
Right off the
um
presses.
directly. Um, And then that's kind of the end of my arc summary. Did you have any final thoughts on that? Because I feel like I kind of said a lot. This is more what I had wanted to do for every arc roundup, by the way,
Yeah,
audience.
I think that's good. I when I was either listening to this or the S9 arc, and I guess it's like a half arc or whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
was up in the YouTube comments and somebody commented, can I just like skip this part or whatever? Like I don't want to listen to these interludes. And I was so offended. But I'll never get over that. I would hope that it was these chapters because
I
to
could
skip the
imagine it.
S9 chapters is fucking insane.
One, I could imagine someone saying that about the S9 chapters, but two, it probably literally was this one because people are like,
Yeah.
well, if Taylor's not directly on screen, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
understand the storytelling or release order or like,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's like there is external information that you can't tell through Taylor's perspective because then she would know it, that we as the audience need as dramatic irony or like to understand the stakes of a situation that Taylor doesn't have full context on, like stuff like that throughout the
Yeah.
book.
I think it's way more fun when you are given those opportunities
Yeah,
to know more than the main character.
and like understanding characters like Clockblocker, Weld, Vista, that's like super important for like a huge chunk of the upcoming book for like their interactions because she will have direct conversations with Weld and Clockblocker for sure, and like her and Vista ping off each other in fights several times, and like they do have these like personalities that mesh better or worse and stuff. I don't know. It's all important.
I agree.
Vale says some people just want Taylor's story when they're reading the first time, have no patience for anything outside of her POV, and have expectations that this isn't parahumans, it's Taylor.
Filler time.
Yeah. I guess there were a few interludes. It's not that I didn't want to hear them, but it's more like I think it was in like arc 15 there was stuff where or no, it's in arc 14. Um wait, I'm not sure. It's whenever Defiant has his interlude and it's like cuts away from a main scene that's happening. Um
Mhm.
uh yeah. Oh, I guess that might be arc 18. Jeez. But it's just like crazy shit is happening and then like it cuts away to a character in a different city and it's like, "What?"
Yeah.
Oh, actually I know what it is. It's arc 16 because it happens right after a gunshot goes off.
Oh, nice.
Um, all right, so moving on to the audience participation, we've got the questions: why is Vista the best, and why is Shadowstalker the worst? And the answers that we have here are from Vale. Vista has empathy and concern for others while still being true to herself. Shadowstalker completely selfish to the point of callously murdering, with no actual character to develop underneath. Now I have to disagree with that last sentiment, but callously murdering definitely. She is
Yeah.
quite the little murder fiend. Um,
Listen, Vista did a murder too, okay?
yeah, has empathy for those she murdered.
He did have empathy for them.
Yeah. Greg says Shadowstalker represses everything and channels all the sad emotional energy into hurting other people. Hurting people with words, with fists, with crossbow bolts. She's bitter, lonely person who can only understand people who are as damaged as she is. In short, she's perfect for upper management. Um, And then, as for Vista, you can see how she might become a shadow stalker if she was forced to keep it all bottled up. If she got the wrong message and decided that she couldn't rely on anybody but herself. But instead, she chooses to be vulnerable and to accept others' vulnerability. It's a note of hope in this catastrophic city. Yeah. And then Vale at some point during a thing about Shadowstalker said completely selfish, which I'm sure that I must have said the wrong words somewhere, but yes, completely selfish. Um, do you got any thoughts on these questions? They were basically joke questions to fill the time, but we got a couple
I agree
answers.
with those for the most part. Except that I wouldn't say Vista's the best. I'm just saying.
She's
I
a
think
true blue
she's
hero.
Vista's mid. I
um,
do appreciate that she has empathy. Very good to have.
I guess I appreciate that she has empathy. Oh,
Yeah.
whatever.
She doesn't only have it, but she's pretty good at using it. She's really bad at using it in conflict though, like we saw with Shadow Stalker. It's not a like when she's the focus of the conflict. And saying I pity you isn't exactly the way to go.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Um. Oh, cool. Vale says you only said right words. There is no critique intended. Oh, okay. Well, sometimes you say the wrong shit and you don't even notice. Um. But I guess my question for it's more focused on 10.2, but it's gonna be like thoughts on the flashback chapter. Uh, Pros, cons, all thoughts accepted. All right, and I'm gonna post that in the thing before I forget all week. Right, exactly now.
Okay.
Done. Because
There it
otherwise, I'll
is.
post it Friday. Um. Anyway, so we are basically at the end. Does anyone have any final thoughts as we ride out on no music? Because I didn't pick music this week.
Silently. No, I think I mean, I said a lot,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
stand by it. Vista's mid. That's all.
Vale says, sigh, you really need to take a lesson from teacher Jack Slash to truly create art. One need constraints. Yeah, the constraint is I don't have any music. So, this, so the Discord server link can be found in the stream description or the YouTube channel description, as well as the following links to the author of the work, Wildbow, his Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow, the full text of Worm at parahumans.wordpress.com, and then the entire fan-made audiobook, also free online at audioworm.rain-online.org, as well as YouTube, Spotify, basically every podcast app. So, you can find it.
You'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Vale says, set a time limit to answer, set some boundaries. How can I be a proper villain otherwise? Yeah. So, yeah.